I was the world's deadliest assassin. Then, at 65, I collapsed in the rain and woke up looking 19. Almost 50 years vanished from my body, but every killing skill stayed exactly where it was. 3 months after that change, I stood inside a Providence safe house in Greyhaven. Providence with the assassin cartel that had raised me. It hunted my gray-haired face for $60 million. My young face appeared on none of its orders. The men around me had learned that detail too late. One assassin lay across a broken table. Another had dropped his pistol and kept staring at my hands. The last survivor dragged himself backward through shell casings. "Where's Declan Wolfe?" the survivor rasped. I walked toward him and removed my mask. "Right here." His eyes found the teenager's face, then they found the bodies again. The math ruined his evening. He reached for the radio clipped to his vest. I put a blade through the radio, and the man beneath it, the only witness to my new face, stopped moving. The body in that room was 19. I still had no idea why. To understand how a dying old assassin became that teenager, we need to go back 3 months, to my bookstore in Greyhaven. I still had cancer then. My doctor gave me 3 months. The pills sat beside an empty photo album. 50 years of missions had filled my memory and left the album blank. Near closing time, a uniformed girl asked for schoolbooks for her younger brother. Her name was Hannah Linwood, though I learned it later. Her brother was real. Her uniform came from no local school, wrong stitching, no campus dust, blood inside the hinge of the knife beneath her jacket. I wrapped the books and pushed them across the counter. "No charge." Hannah's fingers stopped over the package. "You give expensive books to every suspicious teenager?" "Only the armed ones." Her gaze snapped to mine. I pointed at her collar. "Wrong stitching, and you missed blood inside the knife hinge." Hannah shifted toward the weapon. "The good news is, you can leave with the books," I told her. "Why?" "Because you care about your brother. Providence hasn't trained that out of you yet." Providence House trained abandoned children and erased failures. Hannah's posture gave her away. The safety click behind the shelves meant Plan B. "Hannah, down!" The windows exploded. I covered her. 1 round entered my side. Her handlers fired before she could fail. 4 shooters closed in. Clyde Brannock, the flexible bounty hunter called Coyle, spoke through my phone. "Providence marked you SSS level," Coyle drawled. I asked, "Price?" Coyle laughed. $60 million. That money was mine. Providence had emptied the account I meant to leave my daughter and placed my own fortune on my head. 50 years of service had become the reward for murdering me. One shooter shoved Hannah against the counter and pressed a pistol to her neck. She finally understood that Plan B included her corpse. Coyle's voice warmed with fake sympathy. "You're dying anyway. Make this easy." Hannah still held the books for her brother against her chest. I had spent a lifetime obeying people who treated children like ammunition. I was done helping them aim. The shooter struck me and threw me toward the rear exit. I let him. My heel hit the emergency bar. My hand slipped inside my coat. The flash grenade burst before anyone understood why I had stopped resisting. White light filled the shop. I drove my elbow into the rear guard, pulled Hannah through the door, and locked it behind us. 2 shooters fired blind. One hit his own partner. The other punched holes through a shelf of romance novels. Even half dead, I found that disrespectful. Hannah tried to hold me upright in the alley. My legs were already failing. "Why did you save me?" she demanded. I pointed at the package. "Carry the books." Hannah tightened her grip. "That isn't an answer." "It's the task you can handle right now," I told her. Sirens sounded 3 streets away. Survival ended the argument. I sent Hannah toward the subway and walked alone into the rain. At a small park, blood soaked my shirt and cancer crushed each breath. I had survived wars, hostage planes, and Providence training. The organization still found the cheapest way to kill me, steal my daughter's future and let my own body finish the job. I dropped beside a bench and pressed one hand over the wound. I refused to let Providence write that ending. My body disagreed. Everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I smelled salt water, blood, and cheap disinfectant. An open Bounty body bag lay beside me. A tag on its zipper carried Coyle's restaurant mark. Beyond the door, one guard complained about dragging an old man's body from the park. So Coyle's men had recovered me for the bounty. They expected a dying 65-year-old inside the storage room. Instead, I stepped out wearing his soaked clothes and a body none of them recognized. My hands were smooth. My back was straight. The cancer burn had vanished. The bullet hole in my side had closed. The old coat swallowed my hands. My trousers dragged across the floor. The men saw an underdressed teenager walking out of a locked room and relaxed for exactly the wrong reason. One guard frowned. "Whose kid are you?" I checked my reflection in a steel cabinet. Black hair, clear skin, a face around 19. Then the guard grabbed my shoulder. I caught his fingers and closed my hand. Bones cracked. His partner stopped laughing. A third man dropped the magazine he was loading. 2 witnesses reached the same conclusion. The kid was wrong and the room was cooked. The first guard swung with his free hand. I stepped inside, broke his balance, and sent him through a folding chair. Another man circled behind me with a steel pipe. His reflection crossed the cabinet before his shoes made a sound. I ducked, caught the pipe under my arm, and pulled him into the guard whose hand I had crushed. Both men hit a seafood tank. Water washed across the floor. A fourth assassin reached for the alarm. I kicked a loose chair leg through the wall switch before his palm arrived. He stared at the wood buried beside his fingers, then slowly moved his hand away. My eyes tracked faster. My balance returned before each step finished. The skills had survived, and the body had finally stopped arguing with them. A man charged from beside the seafood tank. I reached into the water, seized a live octopus, and snapped it across his face. Yes, an octopus. You survive 50 years in my profession. You stop judging the inventory. The animal wrapped around his head. I pulled one arm tight across his throat and used the body as a shield. A bullet struck the man behind me. I whipped the octopus around another attacker's wrist, dragged him forward, and pinned his sleeve to the wall with his own knife. He stared at the tentacle binding him. I stared back. First time? He nodded very carefully. Smartest man in the building! A shotgun appeared in the office doorway. I flipped the seafood tank lid into the muzzle. The blast punched through plastic and scattered ice across the room. I stepped through the falling ice, wrapped two octopus arms around the shotgun stock, and pulled. The weapon left the shooter's hands. The last standing guard watched a teenager disarm a grown man with dinner and chose the floor without being asked. The man with the crushed hand tried one final rush. I turned the shotgun stock sideways, caught his throat without firing, and drove him across the wet floor into the office door. The pinned guard flinched. The one on the floor covered his head before I even looked at him. A movement that once required planning now arrived before conscious thought. A strike that once hurt my joints traveled through young muscle without resistance. Providence had spent years waiting for age to weaken me. Age had left the room. The shotgunner tried to crawl beneath a desk. I placed one wet tentacle across his shoulder. Stay! He stayed! Within a minute the floor was full. My breathing remained steady. The gunshot wound was gone. The cancer pain was gone. Every movement felt faster than memory had promised. On a desk, I found the photograph Providence had distributed. It showed Declan Wolfe as an old man with hollow cheeks and silver hair. I held it over a burner. The paper curled. My old face blackened and disappeared. The man you're hunting is dead, I told the survivors. Nobody challenged the statement. One man was still trying to remove seafood from his collar. Outside, cold air struck young lungs that did not ache. I ran the first block simply because I could. My legs carried me faster than the old body had managed in decades. The joy lasted until I remembered who had paid for the bounty. Youth was a miracle. Providence was still the bill. I reached the subway before sunrise. The window across from my seat showed a clean face, healed skin, and no gray hair. A camera looked directly at me and returned no alert. Two transit officers passed without slowing. Providence had built an international hunt around a face I no longer wore. Two men near the rear of the train were bragging about stealing medicine money from a desperate family. One smoked beneath the no-smoking sign and blew fumes toward an exhausted woman. I needed clothes that fit. Providence had provided the moral justification for free. I followed the men into the station restroom and locked the door. The smoker pulled a knife. You lost, pretty boy? His grip was backward. I tapped the blade. Thumb higher, wrist lower. He blinked. What? If you're going to threaten people, stop embarrassing the knife. His friend lunged first. I folded his friend over a sink. Then I corrected the smoker's grip and pinned his sleeve to the stall door with his own knife. The smoker looked down, realized his own knife held him in place and lost control of his bladder. His friend crawled toward the exit. I stepped on the back of his jacket and asked where they had put the medicine money. He pointed at an envelope inside the smoker's coat. I took the envelope, their jackets, and their shoes. Behind the restroom door, the pinned smoker demanded his clothes back. I slid his cigarettes beneath the stall and kept the jacket. Consider it a health program. His friend asked whether I was police. The smoker answered first. Police don't correct your grip. Finally, somebody had learned something. Dressed like someone born this century, I checked my accounts from a public terminal. Every dollar was gone. I checked the balance twice because $60 million should leave a more dramatic corpse than a zero on a screen. The transfer history showed my retirement funds split across Providence fronts, bounty payments, and the people arranging my death. Even the betrayal had used my account correctly. Very professional theft. Providence had grown from an orphanage into a network of private clubs, schools, medical fronts, chapels, and shell companies. It had taken my money, marked my old face, and assumed my body would finish dying on schedule. I closed the terminal. Then I made my first decision as a 19-year-old man with 65 years of grudges. I would enter Providence under a new name. I would climb through its own ranks, and I would destroy it from the inside. My first target was Coyle, the flexible bounty hunter who had put Providence gunmen inside my bookstore. He was hunting a dying old man. I was young, healthy, and walking straight toward his restaurant. Before I arrived, one of Coil's security cameras had recorded why ordinary killers feared him. A crew of mercenaries had entered his private dining room demanding a share of the bounty. Their leader laughed because Coil had never earned one of the 12 apostle seats, the highest positions in Providence. Coil smiled, bent backward beneath a machete, and wrapped both legs around the attacker's neck. The second mercenary fired. Coil twisted around the first man's body, used him as cover, then pushed one arm through a gap no normal shoulder could survive. 3 men hit the floor before a waiter dropped his tray. The waiter did not pick it back up. Excellent instincts. Coil straightened his suit and asked the last mercenary whether apostle rank still mattered. The man tried to answer. Coil's heel closed his throat first. Coil's body defeated ordinary locks, holds, and angles. He treated bones as polite suggestions. Anyone fighting him by normal rules was already cooked. Then one of his surviving men rushed in with worse news. The dock base had been wiped clean. No old man, no useful photograph of the attacker. The witnesses could describe only a black-haired teenager and a live octopus. Coil's smile tightened. Declan is moving against me, he told the room. He was right about the movement. He was still picturing the wrong face. I entered the restaurant 12 minutes later and took the center table. The room smelled of grilled seafood and expensive panic. Coil sat beneath a private balcony with 6 armed men around him. Hannah stood behind his chair. Providence had kept her alive because Coil wanted the only trainee who had seen me escape. She carried the wrapped books under one arm. A bruise crossed her cheek and her handlers had taken her knife. Her eyes found me. Recognition flickered, followed by disbelief. I looked 19. She had watched a bleeding 65-year-old disappear into the rain. Coil waved at the menu. We're closed. I opened it anyway. Then the service should be fast. One gunman stepped closer. I ordered the most expensive meal on the page. Look, revenge is hungry work. I was not entering a death trap on an empty stomach. Coil studied me while the kitchen rushed out food. You walked into the wrong room, kid. I tasted the soup. Too much salt. $60 million buys better seasoning? Every armed man shifted. Hannah's grip tightened around the books. Coil leaned forward. Where did you hear that number? From the owner. His eyes narrowed. Declan Wolfe? I kept eating. Coil gave me 2 choices. I could tell him where Declan was and die quickly, or stay quiet and die slowly. He made the offer loudly enough for the whole restaurant. The bartender stopped polishing a glass. 2 kitchen workers watched through the service window. Coil wanted witnesses because fear worked better when other people carried the story. He tapped one finger against the table for the quick death and another for the slow one. Hannah looked from those fingers to the bruised books under her arm. Providence adults had offered children choices like that before. Both roads always ended where the adult wanted. I placed my spoon down. You forgot the 3rd choice. Coil shook his head. There isn't one. I am Declan. Silence held for half a second. Then Coil laughed so hard he slapped the table. One gunman joined him. Another kept staring at Hannah because she had not laughed at all. That second man was the useful witness. He saw the one person with real information turn pale. Coil pointed at my face. Declan is an old corpse with cancer. Your information expires faster than your seafood. Hannah's mouth twitched. She tried to hide it by looking down. Coil caught the reaction and snapped at her. You know this boy? Hannah answered carefully. I know he's dangerous. Dangerous? Coil spread his arms. He's sitting 6 feet from 6 guns. He should have stopped there. Naturally, he ordered the nearest man to shoot me. The gunman lifted his pistol. I picked up 2 chopsticks. The first entered the soft point beneath his jaw and locked his arm. The second drove into the barrel before his finger finished tightening. The weapon fired. The blocked barrel split. Metal tore across the gunman's hand, and he crashed beside my chair. Hannah took 1 step back. The waiter dropped a bowl and ran into the kitchen. Different witnesses, same update. Dinner had changed categories. Coil's laughter vanished. 2 more men rushed me from opposite sides. I kicked the table upward, caught its edge, and drove it into the first man's knees. The second fired through the wood. I tipped a bowl of red sauce across the polished floor. Coil scoffed. You think sauce will save you? I slid beneath the next shot, pulled the table with me, and disappeared behind the spray and shattered dishes. The gunman aimed at movement. He hit his partner. I rose inside his reach, stripped the pistol, and broke the slide against the table edge. Hannah tracked every motion without blinking. Her eyes were exceptional. Even then, I filed that away. Coil launched over the wreckage, his torso twisted sideways. One arm snaked around my neck while his legs hooked my waist. The hold should have folded a normal opponent backward until the spine failed. He squeezed and grinned into my ear. Got you. The body inside his coil went limp. Coil tightened again. Then he smelled blood that was not mine. I stood behind him. During the sauce spray, I had pulled his wounded subordinate into my coat and fed that body into the hold. Coil had wrapped himself around his own man and kept crushing because confidence had replaced eyesight. Hannah stared at the coat, then at me. One of Coyle's gunmen lowered his weapon without meaning to. Coyle unwrapped himself in a panic. His trapped leg caught beneath the corpse. He fell hard, tried to stand, and finally understood why I had let him see the decoy. I kicked his pistol away. Coyle raised both hands. "Wait, we can deal, can we?" I asked. He pointed at Hannah as though offering a chair. "Take the girl. She's young, loyal enough if you scare her. I'll give you names, money, anything." Hannah's face emptied. He had ordered her murder at the bookstore. Now he was selling her to survive the restaurant. Man, what a loyal mentor. I let the disgust sit on him. Coyle scrambled toward the back door. "You aren't Declan. You're his son, his student. Some copy." I stepped on his wrist. He looked up, and I used the same footwork I had used during a mission decades earlier. Coyle had seen it once from across a battlefield. His pupils widened before I touched him again. "The stance," he whispered. Recognition finally reached him. "Declan," Coyle whispered. I bent his arm behind his back. His shoulder rotated farther than a normal man's, so I kept going. His smile broke first, then the joint followed. "You used my money to hunt me," I told him. "You shot a child to make the job easier." Coyle gasped. "Providence ordered it. You enjoyed it." He tried one last twist toward my throat. I caught his neck and turned with him. Coyle hit the floor facing the wrong direction. The bartender stared at the man who had ruled the restaurant. One kitchen worker slowly lowered the cleaver he had been gripping for protection. Hannah watched Coyle's fingers twitch once, then stop. The room had spent years treating him like a monster nobody could corner. A teenager had cornered him with his own arrogance. Hannah's borrowed knife slipped from a dead gunman's belt and clattered near her shoe. She did not pick it up. The last surviving guard backed into the wall and pressed both palms flat against it. Coyle had recognized me. Survival did not join him. His death made Providence panic louder. By that afternoon, every assassin in its network received the SSS-level order. $60 million. Declan Wolfe. Elderly, terminally ill, extremely dangerous. Providence even bought public advertising space with my old photograph. One digital sign offered information about me beside a senior lunch discount. I had spent 50 years becoming a legend. Marketing turned me into a missing grandfather before dinner. The joke created a real problem. My old face was now everywhere, and Coyle's death proved I was striking back. Every camera watched for wrinkles. Every hunter ignored youth. Providence had made its own blind spot public. So I went to the one person who could build me a new life. That night, beneath a homeless shelter in Greyhaven, I entered a hidden elevator and descended into a private residence worth more than the building above it. Beatrix Fairbanks lived there. She was blind, deadly, and had supported my operations for years through hacking, research, and the occasional slap when I deserved one. She smelled unfamiliar soap and a young body entering her home. Her cane blade reached my throat before the elevator doors closed. "Providence sent a child?" Beatrix asked. I moved the blade aside. She rotated with me, caught my sleeve, and slammed me into the wall. "Still rude," I told her. Beatrix froze for one beat. That voice. Then she attacked harder. "Fair." Rejuvenation was a difficult sales pitch. We crossed the room in 6 fast exchanges. Her cane cut my jacket. I trapped the blade beneath a chair leg. She swept the chair away and drove her palm toward my ribs. Beatrix fought by sound, air pressure, and memory. She recognized the length of my step before she accepted the voice. I shortened it. She heard the correction and became angrier. "You know my house," Beatrix snapped. "I paid for half of it," I told her. "You complained about the furniture," Beatrix shot back. "It was ugly then too," I said. Her next strike stopped a fraction from my temple. The insult supplied a memory no Providence impersonator could have known. She still needed proof she could touch. A large guide dog raced between us. Kingston ignored every command Beatrix gave him. He jumped against my chest, whined, and shoved his head beneath my hand the way he had done for years. Beatrix lowered the cane. "Kingston," she whispered. The dog licked my chin. I would have preferred a classified password. I received drool and immediate credibility. Beatrix crossed the distance and touched my face. Her fingers traced my jaw, brow, and ears. Then she checked an old scar behind my right shoulder. The scar was gone, but my reflex against that touch remained. Her hand started shaking. "Declan," Beatrix breathed. "Unfortunately," she slapped me, then she gripped my face again. "Kill me," I blinked. That reunion moved quickly. "If dying made you 19, I'm willing to test the procedure," Beatrix said. She ran my fingerprints against one encrypted record from our old operations. The match returned. Kingston kept leaning against my leg. Beatrix touched the place where my old shoulder scar had been. My reflexive curse sounded exactly the same, and she finally lowered her cane. Once Beatrix accepted the impossible, I explained the useful part. Providence searched for Declan Wolfe. A 19-year-old could walk through the same doors under another name. Providence Academy looked like a normal school. Its hidden service club recruited candidates into the assassin ranks. Beatrix tapped her cane against my shoe. You want to enroll in high school. I want access, I told Beatrix. You're 65, she reminded me. My knees disagree, I said. Beatrix's computer produced a clean identity within minutes. Ronan Maddox, 19. Transfer student, no visible connection to Declan Wolfe. The entire assassin world was hunting an old man. Every poster, camera alert, and bounty hunter was already several decades behind. I was about to volunteer as a teenager. 2 weeks later, I entered Providence Academy as Ronan Maddox. The plan was simple. I needed the hidden assassin track to notice me. I also needed everyone else to believe I was merely an unusually capable transfer student. Those goals started fighting before I reached the front doors. A group of girls surrounded me in the courtyard. One offered a campus tour, another offered lunch. A third asked whether I was seeing anyone before she asked my name. My new face had unlocked a side mission called Teenage Popularity. I had survived coups, border wars, and 3 poisonings. None of that prepared me for 5 people asking for my contact information at once. A teacher rescued me by pushing through the circle. She checked my transfer card, looked me over, and grinned. So, Ronan, the teacher teased, what's your type? Quiet. The girls laughed. Hannah watched from the steps with both arms folded. Her expression said she hated the entire situation, which made it much more entertaining. Providence Academy maintained an ordinary public face, classes, clubs, uniforms, cafeteria drama. Underneath it, the service club selected students for Providence missions. I needed that club to invite me. So during the welcome assembly, I stepped to the microphone and gave the hidden students something they could not ignore. My goal is to become an assassin. The auditorium went dead silent. A counselor dropped her program. 2 boys near the back exchanged a look too controlled for normal students. Hannah covered her face with one hand. I let the silence stretch. An assassin of bad grades, I added, academically. The room laughed because it needed somewhere to put the tension. One girl in the front row asked whether assassinating bad grades included tutoring. A boy beside her offered to fail on purpose. The teacher at the microphone coughed into her hand to hide a laugh. The ordinary students converted my announcement into a joke. The hidden students wrote it down. Good. I had knocked on the right door. My first public enemy arrived before lunch. Colby Fenn had dated one of the girls near me for 22 days. He announced that Numberlow Providence had issued a medal for endurance. Colby blocked the hallway with 3 friends. You stole my girlfriend. I met her this morning, I told Colby. She smiled at you, he snapped. That sounds like a problem between you and your face, I said. His friends made the fatal mistake of laughing. Colby charged. I let one thread of killing intent reach him. His step broke. His skin went pale. Every instinct in his body told him the transfer student was standing over a grave only he could see. Then pride shoved him forward anyway. I flicked his forehead. Colby's feet left the floor. He landed flat on his back and slept through the rest of lunch. One friend knelt beside him. The other deleted a message without looking up. Nearby students stopped treating me like pretty hallway decoration. Hannah walked past the body and murmured, subtle. I used one finger, I told Hannah. You nearly launched him into another school district, she said. Greyhaven traffic would have stopped him, I replied. Her mouth twitched. Our first shared joke had arrived over a collapsed boyfriend. Romance was a flexible industry. From an upper-floor window, members of the hidden class watched the scene. I saw one point toward me. Another traced a finger across his throat. They had moved from curious to suspicious. Across the courtyard, a surviving guard from Coyle's restaurant recognized my face. He lifted his phone, took one photograph, and hurried toward the gate. I caught the reflection in a trophy case. The school had given me 2 problems before lunch. Efficient place. I found Hannah in the next classroom and sat beside her. She stiffened. There are 30 empty seats. None of them belong to Hannah Linwood. Her eyes snapped toward me. Providence Academy knew her by a different student record. I had used the name tied to Providence House. I leaned closer. You're alive because I let you leave my bookstore. Hannah's voice dropped. What do you want? Help entering the service club, I told her. Hannah stared at me. You walk into school, announce you want to kill people, throw Colby across a hallway, and now you want my help looking normal? That summary feels judgmental, I said. It was meant to, Hannah replied. I stood before the teacher entered. Hannah caught my sleeve. Where are you going? Somewhere with fewer questions, I told her. You sat beside me, Hannah reminded me. That was my first mistake today, I said. I slipped through the rear door before she could answer. For the next several days, I treated ordinary classes like controlled camouflage. The problem was that 50 years of assassin training made ordinary school tasks ridiculous. During the vision test, I read the smallest line from across the room. The nurse checked the chart twice, then moved it farther away. I read the manufacturer's mark on the bottom. The student with the running record challenged me during physical education. I beat his time while carrying another student's dropped bag. He removed his record ribbon from the wall himself. In home economics, the teacher asked us to carve an apple rabbit. Mine had whiskers, eyelids, and enough detail that the girl beside me poked it to see whether it breathed. She screamed when it rolled. Hannah stared at me from the next table. "You're enjoying this? I spent 50 years eating field rations," I told Hannah. "That doesn't explain the eyelashes," she said. "Standards matter," I replied. The school kept laughing. The hidden students kept watching. A girl asked me to join 3 ordinary clubs before lunch. The attention helped my cover, but each invitation put another camera and another curious student near me. Social popularity was camouflage with a tracking device attached. Hannah saw the problem first. She intercepted one girl carrying a phone toward me and claimed I owed her study time. The girl left disappointed. Hannah kept the phone away from my face and pretended the rescue had been annoyance. "Jealous?" I asked. "Operationally concerned," Hannah replied. "Very romantic wording," I told her. She walked faster. Their investigation tightened around small details. A club member checked my transfer file and found nothing older than 2 weeks. Another followed me after class and lost me between 2 stairwells. The guard from Coyle's restaurant sent his photograph, but Providence's search software rejected the teenager because every alert still demanded gray hair. My new face protected me and made me interesting. Both effects attracted attention. Then 3 bullies gave me the opening I needed. That afternoon, outside the faculty lounge, they shoved a teacher against a locker. One grabbed her bag. Another spat into my coffee when I approached. The largest boy smirked. "Walk away. Transfer." I looked at the cup. "You spat in decent coffee." The boy swung. I moved the cup 6 inches, let his fist pass, and tapped his elbow. His own momentum drove him into the locker. The second boy came from behind with a brick. I caught his wrist, turned, and placed him beneath the falling arm of the first. The brick stopped 1 inch above his friend's nose. Both boys screamed. The third tried to run. I hooked his ankle with my shoe, slid the coffee under his falling face, and caught the cup before it tipped. He landed with his nose beside the spit he had donated. "Drink it," I told him. He apologized to the teacher instead. "Better choice." The teacher took back her bag. The bullies collected every scattered book while the hallway watched, and my coffee was still hot. The teacher grabbed her bag and stepped behind me. One bully held his arm against his chest. Another stared at the untouched coffee as though it had violated physics. A man in a teacher's jacket had watched the entire fight. Gareth Pritchard taught at Providence Academy and ran the service club. He walked with a slight mechanical rhythm from the prosthetic leg beneath his trousers. He waited until the bullies crawled away. Then Gareth kicked at my head without warning. I leaned back just far enough. The coffee surface barely moved. His heel stopped beside my cheek. Gareth looked at the cup, then at my breathing. "Who trained you?" "Bad people," I told Gareth. "What do you want?" he asked. "Revenge," I said. That answer reached something personal. Gareth lowered his leg and handed me a black club card. "The service club meets after class," he said. The teacher I had protected exhaled. One hidden student watching from the stairs immediately sent a message. Gareth's test had changed my status in public and my danger in private. I had entered Providence's pipeline. The club card opened one locked hallway and closed several ordinary doors. Students who had smiled at me that morning started measuring my posture. A senior I had never met photographed my hands. The card gave me access, and it put cameras on my hands, my breathing, and every mistake I could no longer afford. The service club room held Hannah and 2 brothers built like opposite answers to the same question. Dexter Kells was broad enough to block the doorway. Everyone called him Big Kells. Rudy Kells was shorter, faster, and known as Little Kells. They had survived Providence House together and treated synchronized boasting as a competitive sport. Big Kells cracked his knuckles. "Outsiders don't belong here." Little Kells cracked his at the same time. "Especially pretty outsiders." I winked at Hannah. She looked away too quickly. Big Kells pointed at me. "Did you just flirt during our challenge? Your challenge needed production value." The brothers announced a club tradition where new members proved themselves with bare fists. They attacked together. I gave ground, blocked late, and let them believe their pressure worked. Big Kells drove me toward the wall. Little Kells cut off my escape. Their teamwork was real. Their confidence was a public health concern. Big Kells switched to heavy body shots. Little Kells attacked the knees whenever I turned. Their rhythm had survived Hell Month, Providence House's lethal childhood trial, because each brother covered the mistake the other made. I respected that enough to hide the gap instead of humiliating them. After 3 minutes, both brothers were breathing through open mouths. I had not taken one deep breath. Hannah did not miss the choice. She watched me move half a step slower whenever Gareth looked through the office window, then recover the moment his attention shifted. Still, I stepped outside the brothers' final charge and let my heel slide backward as though I had barely escaped. Big Kells dropped to one knee and grinned. He ran. Little Kells collapsed beside him. "We broke him!" Hannah looked from their shaking arms to my dry collar. The brothers celebrated a victory that required me to leave for lunch. Gareth wrote the result down as a draw. Big Kells objected because a draw sounded less heroic. Little Kells demanded the record show, strategic exhaustion victory. Hannah wrote one word beneath both requests: delusional. Hannah followed me into the empty hallway and slammed one hand beside my head, pinning me to the wall. "You never got tired," she snapped. I glanced at her arm beside my face. "You could ask before putting me against walls." Her ears turned red. "Answer the question." "I have an early lunch," I told Hannah. "You're impossible," she snapped. "Yet here you are," I said. She stepped back before the exchange became more dangerous than the fight. While we argued, a private shuttle camera across Greyhaven recorded a driver accepting an absurd cash payment from one passenger. The man loaded several large suitcases into the rear. One suitcase moved. The driver asked about it. The passenger placed another stack of bills on the dashboard and told him to keep driving. The footage reached Gareth that evening. He called the four of us into the service club and placed a photograph of Calvin Carrington on the table. Calvin was the kidnapped son of Benedict Carrington, the chairman of Carrington Industries. "Bring him back alive," Gareth told us. "You earned D-rank certification." Big Kells raised his hand. "What's the catch?" Gareth replayed the moving suitcase and paused on the latch. Tiny fingers pushed against it from inside. "The man who took him likes games." No one laughed after that. The next test looked like a day at an amusement park. By sunset, somebody would be betting on how many of us kept our legs. The moving suitcase led us to an amusement park outside Greyhaven the next morning. Our rule was simple: find Calvin Carrington alive, and the four of us earned D-rank licenses. Fail, and a kidnapped child stayed with a man who treated pain like casino entertainment. Gareth gave us Calvin's photograph and the signal from his wireless earbuds. The briefing ended there. I preferred it that way. Long briefings usually mean somebody is hiding the part that gets you stabbed. The park opened beneath bright music and fake happiness. Big Kells and Little Kells forgot the mission within 30 seconds. A line of carnival dancers crossed the entrance plaza. Both brothers turned in perfect synchronization and walked into the same trash can. Hannah watched them untangle themselves. "Providence's future. Try to contain your pride," I told her. Two girls asked for my contact information near the ticket booth. Hannah stepped between us and held up Calvin's photograph. "He's missing." One girl blinked. "Is she your girlfriend?" Hannah answered too fast. "No." I nodded thoughtfully. "That sounded relaxed." She elbowed me hard enough to prove the opposite. The earbuds last connected near a shooting booth. The game operator claimed every rifle was fair. Hannah picked one up, checked the sight, and saw the barrel had been bent by less than a degree. She smiled. The operator's own smile weakened. Hannah compensated on the first shot. Then she hit every target in order, including the tiny bonus plate he had hidden behind a spinning duck. The booth alarm screamed. Plush animals dropped from the ceiling until the counter disappeared. Big Kells hugged a giant bear. Little Kells grabbed 3 prizes and accused the machine of underpaying them. The operator rechecked the rifle twice. A family waiting behind us began cheering for Hannah. Her status changed from quiet killer to carnival legend in 40 seconds. She handed the largest prize to a little boy staring from the line. I let the team stay for another hour. They had grown up inside Providence House. Hellmonth had given them bullets before it gave them birthday cake. A few rides and rigged games would not ruin the mission. For once, they looked their age. Hannah rode the fastest attraction without blinking. Big Kells screamed on the first drop, then blamed a mechanical defect. Little Kells bought the photograph before anyone could destroy the evidence. Big Kells spent half his prize tickets on a plastic crown and declared himself mission leader. Little Kells bought the same crown in a different color and declared a leadership dispute. Hannah won both crowns from them at a ring toss booth before they finished arguing. She placed one on my head. "You're the oldest," Hannah said. "Physically, I'm younger than both clowns," I replied. Hannah adjusted the crown on my head. "Emotionally, you complain like a grandfather." The brothers tried calling me grandpa. The joke died when I looked at them. Some running gags understand survival. Then Calvin's earbud signal moved toward a public restroom. The warm part ended there. Hannah followed the signal alone because the women's side held the stronger connection. Inside, she found an anxious woman holding one earbud she had discovered near a sink. Hannah tried to smile politely. Her polite smile looked like a hostage video. The woman screamed for her boyfriend. A large man charged through the doorway, saw Hannah cornering his girlfriend, and grabbed her shoulder. Hannah flipped him over a sink before I reached the entrance. She raised the lollipop she had been eating and lined its stick toward his eye. Then Hannah saw the terrified woman holding Calvin's earbud. Her wrist stopped on its own. "Wrong target," Hannah muttered. She lowered the candy, released the boyfriend, and accepted the earbud. The man stayed on the floor. His girlfriend thanked Hannah, then thanked the lollipop for remaining candy. I reached the doorway after the choice was already made. "Good restraint," I told her. Hannah pointed at the man on the floor. He grabbed me and kept both eyes. Personal growth. That clue pointed toward the park's sold-out haunted house. The attraction had displayed a sold-out sign since morning, yet nobody entered, nobody exited, and the employee at the door kept checking one locked service gate. I watched the speakers pulse beneath the building. Inside a haunted attraction, screams were normal. People expected strangers to grab them. Heavy music-covered movement, perfect place to move captives. Big Kells cracked his knuckles. "Our license is in there!" Little Kells nodded. "Also the child." "Excellent save," Hannah muttered. We entered before the signal moved again. The first corridor held rubber corpses and red lights, the second had actors behind mesh. By the third, every fake monster had disappeared. Fresh wheel marks crossed the floor beneath the final prop. A service panel opened only after the actors believed every guest had dropped. A sweet chemical smell reached me. The hidden route required us to become cargo too. I caught Hannah's eye and tapped twice against my leg, our signal for controlled collapse. She understood the first tap. The needle behind her made the second irrelevant. I breathed shallowly and let my knees buckle. Big Kells swung at a masked worker. A needle entered his neck. Little Kells reached for his brother and dropped beside him. Hannah fought longest. Then the room went dark. We woke inside a warehouse beyond the park. Our wrists were tied. Children lay inside open suitcases along one wall, including the kidnapped child. A thin man with a curved knife paced between us. He was Duncan Reeve, an expelled apostle candidate who needed a wager before cruelty felt interesting. Gareth called him the Gambler. I learned later that Gareth had pulled the same name while our signal died inside the haunted house. By then, Duncan's people were already moving us to the warehouse. Duncan crouched beside Hannah. Her breathing was too controlled. "You're awake," he whispered. Hannah kept her eyes closed. Duncan pressed a phone to Gareth's live connection and laughed. "Still walking on one leg, teacher?" Gareth's voice came through the speaker. "Duncan, leave the students alone." Duncan tapped the curved knife against his own teeth. "Let's bet on how many legs they have when you arrive." The threat became measurable. 4 students, 8 legs, one man who had already taken Gareth's. Hannah opened one eye and shifted toward me. She pressed her bare foot against my cheek to test whether I was conscious. I opened my eyes. "You could use a hand," I whispered. Hannah glanced at her tied wrists. "My hands are tied. Mine aren't," I said, lifting both freed wrists. Hannah stared at them, then at her foot still on my face. "Move. You started this arrangement," I reminded her. She removed it fast enough to create wind. I had escaped the restraints minutes earlier. I stayed down because Duncan had not yet revealed the children, exits, or gas line. Acting early feels good. Acting at the right moment keeps people alive. Big Kells woke and heard the wager. He sat upright. "We accept." Little Kells groaned beside him. "We do." Then he saw Duncan smiling and straightened. "We accept." Duncan tossed them a knife and promised a fair duel. Big Kells tested the edge against his thumb. Blunt. Duncan's curved kukri was sharp enough to shave wood from a crate. The gambler had announced fairness and delivered a prop. I still cannot explain why men like him love rules so much when they plan to cheat everyone. Hannah and I moved to help. The brothers blocked us. Big Kells pulled 2 old bullets from his pocket. During Hell Month, Providence House gave every child 2 rounds. Use them on another trainee, and survival became easier. The Kells brothers had kept both bullets unused. 181 kids entered our Hell Month, Big Kells said. We survived without shooting anyone. During that month, the brothers slept back to back so neither could be attacked unseen. They shared food until the portions became ridiculous. When another trainee offered safety in exchange for 1 bullet, Big Kells refused. Little Kells kept the second round because his brother kept the first. The bullets remained clean after years inside Providence. Their pride was loud. Their loyalty had always been louder. Little Kells raised the blunt knife. "We're becoming apostles like Declan Wolfe." They were idiots. They were also brave. The brothers attacked together. Big Kells absorbed Duncan's first swing on the flat of the blunt blade. Little Kells slid beneath the return and drove his shoulder into Duncan's knee. For 3 exchanges, their teamwork pushed the gambler backward. Duncan's smile widened. Then his kukri shattered their knife. He cut Big Kells across both arms before the pieces hit the floor. Little Kells lunged to cover him. Duncan slashed his legs, spun, and opened 4 more lines across Big Kell's limbs. The brothers collapsed beside each other. The joking stopped. Blood spread beneath their sleeves. Duncan placed 1 boot on Big Kell's ankle and asked which leg Gareth would miss more. Little Kells tried to crawl across his brother despite the cuts in his legs. Big Kells shoved him back toward the children. Neither asked for mercy. Their bravado had finally stripped away, and the thing beneath it was better. Each brother still chose the other. Hannah's face hardened. The rope around her wrists creaked as she fought it. The kidnapped child stirred inside the nearest suitcase and whispered for his father. Duncan heard him and smiled wider. That smile ended my patience. I stood. "Take mine instead." Duncan looked me over. "1 leg? Both arms. Both legs. My neck." Hannah turned toward me. The Kells brothers tried to rise. Duncan's pupils sharpened with pleasure. A life-or-death wager had his full attention. He offered me a knife. I walked past it and picked up a floured serving tray from a catering cart. Duncan laughed. One of his guards laughed with him. Hannah did not. She had seen what I did with chopsticks. "I'll use this," Duncan called Gareth on speaker again. "Your new student wagered his whole body with a tray." Gareth went quiet. Years earlier, Duncan had challenged 5 veteran B-rank executioners in a casino and beaten them all. When Gareth tried to stop him, Duncan made the same wager and took his leg. Gareth's warning came through the phone. "Ronan, his heavy swings hide the knives in his sleeves." Duncan's head turned. Still teaching from a distance, he attacked. The kukri struck the tray and split it down the center. His guard cheered. I kept both halves. The broken edges had become blades. Duncan expected the tray to fail once. He never considered that breaking it would give me 2 lighter weapons and twice the angles. I caught his kukri between the halves, twisted, and made the heavy blade strike the concrete beside his own foot. Hannah saw the opening and pulled the kidnapped child's suitcase farther from the gas line. One guard tried to stop her. She swung the loose restraint cord across his eyes and kept moving. I cut toward Duncan's throat. He leaned away and countered. I shifted toward his ribs, then the throat again. Every attack made him protect the obvious target. He swung heavier. I fed one tray half into the kukri, let it bend, and used the curved metal to redirect his wrist. Hannah tracked the pattern. One guard stopped laughing when Duncan's sleeve opened and revealed 3 hidden knives. The gambler threw them in one burst. I used the first tray half as a decoy, dropped it, and stepped through the gap. The second half cut his forearm. Duncan accelerated. His next kukri strike cracked the floor where my foot had been. He reached for another hidden knife. His fingers failed. The weapon slipped from his hand. Duncan stared at it. All my throat attacks had been bait. Each time he defended his neck, the lower tray edge touched the tendons and nerves controlling his grip. Tiny cuts. Same route. Repeated until the hand stopped obeying. He ordered the hand to close again. 2 fingers twitched. The others hung useless. His kukri lay close enough to see and too far for his body to claim. Big Kells noticed first and dragged himself upright against a crate. Little Kells followed his stare. Both brothers realized the floured tray had dismantled the weapon arm that shredded them. Their pain turned into ugly, delighted laughter. Duncan shook his hand. Coincidence. I wrapped the remaining tray metal around my fist. As a child, Duncan had survived a death wager and felt terror turn into aggression. Gareth's old file described the moment. Duncan spent the rest of his life chasing that feeling and calling it luck. Duncan bared his teeth. A rock always crushes an egg. I raised the metal-wrapped fist. Only if the egg agrees. I drove it into his jaw. Duncan left the floor, crossed the betting table, and landed among his own chips. One guard stepped backward. Another dropped the phone. The Kells brothers watched their nightmare lose his smile. Duncan crawled upright and grabbed a grenade from beneath his coat. The children lay beside a gas line. His wager had failed, so he abandoned the rules and pulled the pin. Nobody joked. Duncan raised the grenade toward the suitcases. Move and they all die! I crossed the distance before his thumb left the lever. My hand closed over his. I forced the live grenade between his teeth and clamped his jaw shut. Duncan's eyes went huge. His jaw trapped the lever beneath my hand. Speaking, biting, or opening his fist would change the pressure. Duncan tried to communicate with his eyes. First he threatened, then he bargained. Then the man who had wagered 8 student legs began pleading without a single usable word. One guard raised his pistol anyway. Hannah kicked the gun beneath a crate. Another guard saw the live grenade between Duncan's teeth and dragged his friend backward. The villain's own men had become witnesses to his surrender. I hit him in the stomach, then the ribs, then the knee. Every blow punished the man, while his own grenade kept him silent. His guards lowered their weapons because one stray shot could kill everyone. Hannah freed the children. Little Kells dragged the chairman's son away from the gas line. Big Kells, bleeding through both sleeves, used his body to shield 2 smaller kids. When the room was clear, I removed the grenade, replaced the pin, and placed it in Duncan's trembling hand. He dropped to his knees. Draw! Duncan sobbed. Call it a draw! You wagered my neck, I reminded him. I release everyone, Duncan gasped. Say their lives were never yours, I ordered. Duncan repeated it, louder. His own guards heard him surrender the only authority he understood. Gareth arrived seconds later with a medical team. He entered expecting severed legs. Instead, he saw the children free, the Kells brothers conscious, and Duncan Reeve crying beneath a black capture bag. Garrett's prosthetic foot stopped beside the man who had taken his real one. He did not need a speech. The bag moved as Duncan begged again. All 4 of us earned D-rank certification. The medical team wrapped the brothers while Gareth unlocked our restraints himself. When he saw the untouched bullet still inside Big Kell's pocket, his expression softened before he hid it behind another order. The kidnapped child reached for Benedict's photograph and asked whether his father had paid the ransom. I told him his father had paid for something better, people stubborn enough to come. The child held that answer until the ambulance doors closed. The Kells brothers kept every limb. Calvin Carrington went home alive. And beneath Carrington Industries, a hidden elevator was already carrying us toward a reward vault owned by a chairman who remembered Declan Wolfe's face. The hidden elevator beneath Carrington Industries delivered us to a private facility built for people who considered armored vaults a decorating choice. 2 guards waited at the bottom. Each looked large enough to bench press Big Kells and use Little Kells as a towel. Big Kells stopped talking. Little Kells whispered, "I could take one." The taller guard looked down at him. Little Kells corrected himself. "Socially, I could take one socially." A sharply dressed guide welcomed us as newly certified D ranks. The Kells brothers forgot their injuries for several seconds. Hannah noticed them staring and stepped on both their shoes. The guide led us into an armory and told us to choose one reward each. Glass walls held prototype rifles, collapsible blades, armored clothing, and tools Providence recruits were never supposed to see. Every shelf translated Carrington wealth into something physical. Big Kells collected blades until his arms disappeared. Little Kells found a compact crossbow, 2 pistols, and a knife with enough attachments to qualify as furniture. Hannah kept both hands behind her back, so temptation could not choose for her. "You earned a weapon," I told her. She looked toward the bandages around the brothers' limbs. "Ronan did the fighting. You found Calvin's trail. You freed the children. Take something." Hannah still hesitated. I walked past rifles worth more than my bookstore and selected a discontinued fountain pen from a glass display. The guide blinked. "That's your choice? Good balance." Big Kells stared at his mountain of steel. "It writes, so do obituaries." The guide stopped smiling. Hannah looked at the pen again, this time with more respect. First-class assassins needed an object, an angle, and somebody arrogant enough to stand nearby. Chairman Benedict Carrington summoned me before we left. Benedict ran Carrington Industries, and his son Calvin was the child we had rescued. He sat behind a long desk, studying my face with the concentration of a man reading a 40-year-old debt. He asked about the fountain pen. I named its discontinued production year without thinking. Benedict's hand tightened around his cup. "You resemble someone," he said. "Good-looking man?" Benedict almost laughed. "Terrifying man. On Christmas Eve in 1978, Benedict had been a kidnapped child in Moscow. Elite rescue teams entered the building before me. None came back out. I remembered the snow melting on my coat as I stepped through the front door. The captors had wired the stairs, blocked the windows, and placed young Benedict inside an upstairs office with a pistol at his head. Their leader expected a negotiation team. Providence had sent me. The building had 4 floors and 13 armed men. The failed rescue teams had left equipment at the entrance, so I used their broken radio to trigger false movement on the 2nd floor. Half the captors ran upward. I went through the kitchen. I cut the power first. One captor fired at a shadow and hit his own switchboard. I crossed the dark hallway, used the muzzle flash to find him, and drove him through the stair rail. 2 men rushed from the kitchen. A pot lid caught the first knife. A rolling pin broke the second wrist. A third man fired through the doorway. I pushed a stove cart into his legs and let boiling steam force him away from the trigger. Benedict heard boots running in every direction. Then one set stopped outside his door. The final captor held him by the collar and pressed the pistol beneath his chin. The child tried not to cry. He kept both hands visible because someone had taught him hostages survived by staying predictable. I entered empty-handed. The man checked my sleeves, the floor, and the doorway. He never checked the small change in my palm. "Drop the weapon," he ordered. I had no weapon left, so I took a coin from my pocket. The captor laughed. I flicked it. The coin struck the trigger finger before he could pull. Bones snapped. The pistol turned away from Benedict, and I crossed the room before the man finished screaming. Young Benedict stared at the coin embedded in the wall. Then he stared at me. I carried him out while the building alarms began. He promised he would repay me someday. Children make large promises. Benedict Carrington had grown rich enough to keep his. Back in his office, the chairman looked at my 19-year-old face and reached the only explanation his world allowed. "You're Declan Wolfe's grandson," he said. "I let the mistake live." Benedict's assistant glanced at me again. The giant guard by the door straightened. One wrong conclusion had already changed how the room treated Ronan Maddox. The chairman placed a black key on the desk. He asked no more questions. The key stayed between us while he changed the subject to the machine waiting outside. The St. Wolf Vi-4 was a Carrington stealth motorcycle built to reach 310 miles per hour. Every vehicle near it looked emotionally defeated. Big Kells touched the bodywork with both hands. Little Kells checked the speed display 3 times. Hannah circled the bike and looked at me. "You chose a pen and got this. Efficient shopping." She pointed at the passenger seat. "Do I get a helmet? You get trust." "I'd prefer the helmet," Hannah replied. Benedict provided one. She smiled at him instead of me. Petty but effective. The guide and both giant guards came outside to watch the engine start. One guard nodded at the machine. The other, who had barely acknowledged a D rank inside, nodded to me before he nodded to the bike. Hannah climbed on behind me and warned that crashing a 310-mile-per-hour motorcycle would be embarrassing after surviving Duncan. Our D-rank licenses brought the next summons that evening. Providence Chapel stood in Greyhaven behind stained glass and locked doors. Missions arrived there as revelations, because adding candles made assassins feel respectable. I rode the St. Wolfe Vive 4. The Kells brothers followed on 2 cheap scooters, crouched over the handlebars like angry delivery drivers. At every red light, they shouted that they were saving fuel. The motorcycle reached the chapel 10 minutes before they did. Hannah climbed off with both hands still gripping my jacket. She released it only after noticing the Kells brothers arriving on scooters, helmets tilted, engines wheezing. Big Kells claimed they had taken a scenic route. Little Kells claimed the St. Wolfe 5-4 had cheated by using speed. The St. Wolfe 554 waited outside while the Kells scooters coughed at the curb. Inside, Providence was about to remind us what its rank system did to people without one. Inside, senior assassins welcomed us with cups of dark liquid presented as ceremonial drink. Big Kells swallowed first and spat it across the floor. It was filthy washwater. The seniors laughed. Then one man barked the chapel's single-word order: fight. Every senior in the room attacked the rookies. Big Kells took a fist to his bandaged ribs. Little Kells was thrown across a pew. Hannah blocked 2 strikes before someone kicked the back of her knee. I could have ended the room in seconds. My D-rank cover would have ended with it. Director Von Reddick stepped from the altar. He was a B-rank senior who treated rank like permission to enjoy cruelty. Reddick explained the latter by hitting people. D ranks carried messages, C ranks led teams, B ranks controlled districts. A ranks answered only to apostles. Each title landed with another blow against the brothers. The seniors used the lesson to choose targets. A D rank who raised his head received a kick. A C rank watched because participation preserved his own place. Big Kells tried to cover Little Kells with his injured body. A senior dragged them apart. Reddick saw Big Kells cover his brother and immediately searched for a softer wound. He turned to Hannah. Reddick called her talentless. She kept her chin up. He mentioned Hannah's sick younger brother, Jamie. Reddick knew she saved nearly every dollar for his hemophilia treatment. He told her a weak D rank would never earn enough to keep Jamie alive. Hannah's face changed. That insult reached beneath rank and grabbed the one person she lived for. I caught Reddick's hand before his next strike. The chapel stopped. One senior near the altar stepped back. Another reached for a blade beneath his coat. Reddick looked at my fingers around his wrist. You want to challenge me? I released him. No. My teammates need a hospital. He slapped me. I stayed still. Reddick slapped me again, harder, because the first one had failed to make him feel important. The second strike split my lip. One senior laughed. Another watched my hands, expecting the D rank to lose control. Hannah saw the same trap and stopped struggling against the men holding her. Reddick leaned close. Power is whatever the room agrees you have. Reddick looked at the seniors before he looked at me. Every face still pointed his way. That audience became the handle I used later. Hannah looked at me with fury. The brothers tried to stand. I gave them one glance and kept them down. If I exposed apostle-level skill there, Providence would investigate Ronan Maddox before I reached anyone who mattered. Reddick had witnesses, cameras, and a hierarchy eager to erase unusual recruits, so I let him take the public win. Reddick demanded all 4D rank licenses. I placed them in his hand. He smiled as though he had taken my power. Then I carried Little Kells out while Big Kells supported Hannah. I walked out because protecting the Ronin cover mattered more than crushing Reddick in public. Everyone in the chapel mistook that choice for defeat. Useful mistake. On the motorcycle, Hannah sat behind me and gripped my jacket. The city lights blurred around us. How do I get stronger? She asked. Stop holding the fabric like it insulted Jamie. Her grip tightened. Answer me. Ask again when you mean it, I told Hannah. I mean it now, she said. Then survive tonight, I replied. She went quiet and kept holding on. After midnight, I returned to Providence Chapel alone. Reddick and the seniors were drinking near the altar, celebrating 4 stolen licenses. The room smelled of wax, cheap liquor, and men who had confused a delayed consequence with mercy. I closed the doors. Reddick lifted his glass. Come to beg? I came to ask whether you truly wanted to take it that far. The seniors laughed again. I removed a rosary from the nearest pew and wrapped its nearly invisible cord around my fingers. I'll show you what an apostle-level assassin feels like. Reddick charged first. I moved the cord 1 inch. His instinct saw a line across his throat. He stopped. I shifted my wrist. He saw the cord entering his eye, cutting his fingers, wrapping his ankle, opening his stomach. None of those deaths had happened yet. His trained body recognized every path faster than his mind could reject them. Reddick stumbled backward. A pew split behind him where the cord passed. A candle stand fell into pieces. The glass in his hand broke before he realized he had squeezed it. He tried a sidestep. The cord touched the hair beside his ear and carved a line into the altar behind him. He tried to lower his center. I changed the angle, and his instincts showed him both knees opening at once. The imagined death stayed inside Reddick. The seniors still saw their director obey a thread. One man removed his hand from his weapon. Another moved his chair away from Reddick, already protecting himself from association. One senior drew a knife. I snapped the cord past his sleeve and cut the handle cleanly in half. The man dropped both pieces and sat down. Another senior retreated behind the altar. Reddick kept dying inside his imagination. 10 angles. 20. 100. Every attempt to move showed him another ending. His knees hit the floor. Please. The word came out small. He offered money first, then mission access, then the names of seniors who had encouraged the beating. Each offer made him smaller because everyone present heard how quickly he would sell them. I stopped beside him and patted the cheek he had used his hand to strike earlier. You teach rank, I told him. Learn danger. Reddick bowed until his forehead touched the chapel floor. I refused every bargain and asked for 4 licenses. The objects he had waved like proof of ownership became the only price I accepted. Beatrix waited in my earpiece. He'll report you, she warned. No. He'd have to admit a D rank made him kneel. Reddick's shoulders tightened. He had heard me. The senior who had moved his chair away from Reddick kept it there. The next morning, Reddick returned our licenses during service club training and claimed the confiscation had been a test. Big Kells kissed his card. Little Kells accused him of stealing the celebration idea and kissed his own. Gareth watched Reddick avoid my eyes. Hannah watched the red mark on his cheek. The licenses were back. Reddick left before the brothers finished celebrating. That afternoon, I found Hannah alone in the training room, punching a dummy with her bare hands until her knuckles split. She had survived Duncan. She had survived Reddick. She was done surviving as the weakest person in the room. Hannah's split knuckles answered the question Vaughn Reddick had planted. She wanted strength badly enough to hurt herself for it. The training dummy rocked beneath another punch. Blood marked the canvas where her hands landed. I caught her wrist before the next strike. You're attacking cloth. Hannah pulled once. The cloth isn't stronger than me. Congratulations, you found your level. Her glare could have stripped paint. I released her and placed the returned D-rank license on the dummy's shoulder. Reddick stole this because you couldn't stop him. Duncan nearly took your teammate's legs. Hating yourself changes neither problem. Hannah looked at the license. Then she looked away. Jamie isn't my real brother, she said. Hannah kept staring at the license instead of me. I stayed quiet and let her finish. Providence House taught Hannah that family left. Adults abandoned her there, instructors used children as tools, and every friendship came with a survival score. Jamie arrived younger, sick, and stubbornly kind. He shared food even when his medicine killed his appetite. He learned Hannah's mission schedule and waited awake because nobody else did. When instructors punished her, Jamie sat outside the training room until she came out, then pretended he had only been passing by. Hannah distrusted every adult promise. A younger boy kept showing up without making one. During one mission, Hannah returned bleeding and nearly unconscious. The staff judged the treatment too expensive for a trainee with average results. Jamie stole a medical bag, opened his own arm, and offered blood because he had heard matching blood could save people. His hemophilia made the act dangerous for him. The stolen needle shook in his hand. He did not know whether their blood types matched. He only knew Hannah was fading and the adults had decided she cost too much. By the time staff found them, Jamie had lost enough blood to need treatment beside her. Providence punished him for stealing supplies. Hannah took the punishment with him. They chose each other as family that day. Hannah woke with Jamie collapsed beside her and his small hand wrapped around hers. From that day, she called him her brother. She became an assassin to pay for his medicine. She saved cafeteria money, worked cleanup shifts in freezing warehouses, and accepted missions Providence adults would not touch. Every bruise had one name behind it. Jamie! Hannah faced me again. Her voice stayed steady until the last word. Make me stronger. I waited. She clenched her jaw. Please, teacher. The title escaped before she could stop it. Hannah's ears turned red. Forget that. I turned toward the door. I was considering it. She appeared in front of me so fast she almost slipped. Teacher! Interesting recovery, I told her. You're enjoying this too much, Hannah accused. Correct, I said. Hannah became my apprentice before either of us left the room. I started with the insult she needed. You're too light for direct power, your reach is poor, and your temper announces every close attack. Hannah folded her arms. Excellent lesson, but your eyes are exceptional. She stopped. During every fight, Hannah watched the whole field. She tracked tiny shifts in wrists, shoulders, weight, and breathing. Her gymnastics training gave her body control most killers spent years building. I placed a coiled rope dart in her hands. A narrow steel weight hung from a long cord. It looked old beside Providence firearms. Old did not mean useless. Your eyes read openings, I explained. This lets you reach them. Hannah tested the weight. People use this? People with patience. She looked offended. So you gave it to the wrong student. You noticed. Training began that night. The first rule was distance. Hannah had to feel the dart through the rope without watching it. I tied a cloth over her eyes and rolled bottles across the floor. She struck none of them. The second rule was recovery. A missed dart had to return before an enemy crossed the gap. Her first return wrapped the cord around my wrist. She looked pleased until I used the same cord to pull her off balance. Teacher abuse, she accused from the mat. Student optimism. The rope burned Hannah's palms. The dart bruised her shoulder twice and wrapped around her ankle once. On the fourth failure, she blamed the weapon. I picked it up and struck 6 points on the dummy before the cord finished uncoiling. Hannah stared. Still the weapon? She held out her hand. Good answer. For the next 6 nights, Hannah learned to send the dart around corners, under tables, and back into her palm without looking. The cord cut her skin until the ointment stained every bandage. She never asked to stop. On the 7th night, I rolled a bottle behind her while she faced the other direction. The dart curved around her shoulder and broke the glass before it touched the floor. Hannah stared at the pieces, then tried to hide the smile. Still the wrong weapon? I asked. Quiet, teacher, Hannah replied. The next week, our first Providence pay envelopes arrived. Big Kells calculated how many missions he needed before buying a sports car. Little Kells calculated apostle salaries and announced retirement at 23. Neither calculation survived basic arithmetic. Hannah folded her pay into a plain envelope and put it away. At lunch, she ate 1 plate and wrapped another portion for Jamie. Then she left early for a cleanup shift at an ice warehouse. I followed at a distance and watched her scrub blood and oil from a freezing floor after midnight. She had asked for strength. Her schedule had no room to recover from it, so I rented the warehouse training space for the next morning. Big Kells and Little Kells arrived because they heard Hannah plan to practice with a string and a doorstop. Big Kells lifted a heavy practice sword. Real weapons have weight. Little Kells swung a baton. And dignity! Hannah uncoiled the rope dart. The warehouse owner stacked several thick ice blocks at the far end. Frost coated the floor. Hannah's palms were taped beneath fresh burns. Her first swing passed wide. The dart struck the floor hard enough to spark. Hannah reeled it back while the Kells brothers provided unsolicited commentary from behind a safety line. Big Kells suggested a heavier weapon. Little Kells suggested a shorter rope. Hannah suggested they stand closer to the target. Both declined. Hannah reset her feet and watched the condensation sliding down the ice instead of the center of the block. Her second swing wrapped around the front block. Big Kells whispered, "See?" Hannah changed her wrist angle. The dart snapped through the first block, skipped off the floor, and punched through 3 more in a single line. Ice burst across the warehouse, and the final steel point buried itself in a wooden post behind the brothers. Big Kells stopped mid-laugh. Little Kells touched the hole beside his ear. The warehouse owner checked the shattered blocks, then asked who had trained her. Hannah looked at me. The brothers immediately turned away and began searching rope darts on their phones. Big Kells hid his screen behind Little Kells. Little Kells was using the same search page. Their mockery had evolved into shopping progress. Big Kells searched for the heaviest rope dart available. Little Kells searched for beginner rope dart that looks advanced. Hannah saw both screens and offered to teach them. The brothers rejected the offer together, then asked the warehouse owner whether private practice hours were available. They had entered laughing at Hannah's weapon. They left hiding rope dart searches from the girl they had mocked. Hannah kept practicing after they left. The ice burst had been flashy. The next 10 throws proved control. 9 returned cleanly to her palm. Her burned hands finally belonged to a technique she could trust. The owner handed Hannah a small bag of burn ointment. He also told her I had prepaid $1,000 for the damaged ice and the training space. She called me after I left. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Hannah asked, "Did you eat lunch?" "Yes," I said. "Tomorrow?" Hannah asked. "Is this how you say thank you?" I asked. "No," she replied. "Then what is it?" I asked. Hannah exhaled. "A meal. Do not make it weird." I laughed once. "You called your teacher after midnight." Hannah hung up. The next text contained a restaurant address and 1 angry punctuation mark. I accepted before she could delete it. The lunch itself lasted 20 minutes. Hannah ordered the cheapest meal, moved half of it into a container for Jamie, and accused me of paying the warehouse owner to embarrass her. "I paid him to protect the floor," I told Hannah. "You bought ointment," she said. "The floor burns easily," I replied. She looked at me over the container. "You're terrible at accepting thanks. You're terrible at giving it." Hannah pushed 1 dumpling onto my plate and declared the debt settled. It was the closest thing she had managed to a thank you. Before Providence turned my blood into a death clock, Beatrix sent me a clip from the facility holding Duncan Reeve. Beatrix, my blind operator, had been tracking the next threat above him. The gambler was raging against B-rank guards, snapping restraints and demanding another wager. Then Dr. Lucian Harrow entered. The room quieted before Lucian touched anyone. He offered Duncan a bet in a calm physician's voice. Duncan stared at him, recognized the danger, and sat down without being forced. That reaction ranked Lucian above the monster we had just defeated. Less than a day later, Providence turned my blood into his invitation. New D ranks had to register at Providence Medical Center. A nurse filled one vial and placed Ronan Maddox's label on it. My face was 19. My DNA and fingerprints still belonged to Declan Wolfe. The vial entered Providence's archive. One match would alert Lucian before dawn and turn everyone near Ronan into a target. I reached Beatrix's underground home while the sample was still processing. She listened. Then she slapped me. "You let Providence take your blood?" Beatrix demanded. I rubbed my cheek. I was distracted by the needle. Beatrix raised her hand again. "You've been shot more times than I've been invited to weddings." I stepped behind Kingston. Unrelated statistics. The dog moved between us, mostly because he liked me, and partly because he enjoyed conflict management. Her screen showed one red comparison line and one overnight deadline. The vial had already left the nurse's cart. Quiet theft would only trigger a second test, so I gave Beatrix the direct solution. "We destroy the hospital's identity archive." She lowered her hand. "That hospital belongs to an apostle. Providence called Lucian the professor because he treated human bodies as unfinished experiments." Beatrix opened his file. In South America, Lucian killed gang leaders, destroyed a tactical unit, and used the bodies for research. Providence Medical Center disposed of failed assassins and enemies beneath ordinary patient floors. One recording showed Shields entering a warehouse. Lucian walked out alone. Another showed an operating room stripped after a patient vanished from the chart. He had turned medicine into a hunting license. I watched him lift a man by the skull. Direct strength would be a problem. Beatrix closed the file. "You need a quiet way inside. I have allowed one." Providence's anniversary screens across Greyhaven changed at noon. "Declan Wolfe will visit Dr. Lucian Harrow." My old face appeared beneath the words. Hannah saw the message from the academy cafeteria. The brothers saw it on a bus shelter and argued over whether Declan would autograph their licenses. None of them knew the man issuing the challenge had eaten lunch beside them. Providence flooded the hospital with assassins to catch me. The next morning, I entered Providence Medical Center wearing Ronan Maddox's D-rank license and joined the search team assigned to hunt Declan Wolfe. The men beside me studied every elderly patient. Lucian waited somewhere above us. Lucian also tested everyone standing close to his target. Providence Medical Center locked its doors around the wrong version of me. The order named Declan Wolfe, 65, gray-haired, terminally ill. I stood in the lobby as Ronan Maddox, 19, D-rank, and carrying a badge that marked me as helpful. Every assassin near me searched wheelchairs and retirement-age patients. Beautiful system. Beatrix spoke through the receiver in my ear. She had intercepted a Providence leadership call triggered by my public challenge. Several elders were pressing the current Providence director for answers. Coyle was dead. Declan had ignored the bounty. Now an apostle-run hospital had been publicly named. The director remained calm and invoked Father Malachi, the founder who had raised Providence's original apostles. "Father Malachi created Declan Wolfe," he told them. "Lucian is the greatest result of my research. Let them meet." That sentence gave me two useful facts. Providence expected Lucian to win, and its director viewed us as competing products. I had spent 50 years being called many things. Product still irritated me most. The hospital search began with medical camouflage. I took a white coat from an unattended cart and entered a patient room before a real doctor could question me. An elderly patient complained that his back hurt. I checked the corridor, pressed 2 fingers beneath his shoulder blade, and shifted the joint into place. The man screamed loud enough to summon 3 nurses, then he rolled his shoulder and stopped. "It's gone," the patient whispered. One nurse stared at me, another rechecked my badge. The patient grabbed my sleeve and asked whether I handled knees. I left before gaining a waiting list. The patient called me "young doctor" as I reached the hall. A real physician heard him, checked the empty treatment chart, and started after me. Big Kels's argument with the cane-wielding grandfather blocked the corridor long enough for the elevator doors to close. Neither brother knew they had just saved my disguise. Across the lobby, Big Kels and Little Kels had been assigned to screen elderly men. They cornered one confused grandfather beside a vending machine. Big Kels held up Declan's old photograph. "Remove the hat." The man removed it. He was bald. Little Kels squinted. "Could be a disguise." The grandfather hit both brothers with his cane. Big Kels caught the second swing and tried to explain that they were certified investigators. The grandfather struck Little Kels instead and shouted for a real nurse. 2 waiting patients applauded. A Providence spotter across the lobby turned away to hide his face. Every hunter watched the grandfather beat the brothers. Nobody examined the young man entering the elevator. I watched from the elevator and decided not to help. Some lessons deserve natural delivery. Hannah entered through the opposite doors with her arm no longer bandaged from Duncan's mission. She carried a food bag large enough for a family and moved like she did not want anyone connecting her to me. She also kept checking the upper floors. Hannah had her own reason for being there. I needed Lucian first. Official records showed no recent photograph matching the apostle. He had erased himself from the public system. So I stopped searching the files and looked for the man everyone else avoided. A B-rank lieutenant entered an operating room with 2 guards. Staff moved out of his path without being told. Beatrix identified him as one of Lucian's personal killers. That made him bait. I followed him inside and closed the door. The lieutenant turned. D-ranks wait downstairs. I'm looking for Lucian, I told the lieutenant. You don't speak his name, he warned. I plan to kill him. I should probably learn where he stands, I said. The guards looked at each other. The lieutenant smiled and tapped the B-rank badge on his chest. 10 seconds, he promised. Then I cut your tongue out. He reached for a scalpel. I started counting. 1. He lunged. I trapped his wrist against the operating table. 2. The first guard attacked from the side. I kicked a rolling instrument tray into his shins and drove the second guard face first into the overhead lamp. 4. The lieutenant broke free and drew a pistol. I flipped the table sheet over his arm, pulled once, and wrapped him against the patient's straps. 7. He fired through the cloth. The bullet hit the light mount and dropped it onto the remaining guard. 9. I placed the fountain pen against the lieutenant's carotid artery. 10. His smile had disappeared around 3. The lieutenant strained against the sheet and demanded his guards stand up. One guard was trapped beneath the fallen lamp. The other had reached the door, seen the fountain pen at his commander's throat, and stopped with his hand on the handle. You promised 10 seconds, I reminded the lieutenant. He looked toward the camera instead of answering. Lucian's people feared their apostle's opinion more than the blade touching them. 2 hospital staff watched through the glass. One backed away from the door. The other turned toward the security camera and waited. I looked into that camera. Beatrix replaced my young face on the live feed with Declan Wolfe's old one. On Lucian's monitors, an elderly legend had just beaten a B rank in 10 seconds inside his own hospital. Then, Beatrix began deleting the recorded files behind me. The lieutenant saw the blank monitor and started struggling harder. A technician upstairs shouted that the archive was disappearing. The bait had landed, and the building began panicking around the wrong face. I left before Lucian arrived. The rooftop door opened beneath my hand. Hannah sat behind an air conditioning unit with 2 whole roasted chickens and 3 empty side dishes. She had claimed the roof as a private cafeteria. I leaned against the wall. Providence pays you weekly now. She tore off a piece of chicken. I'm investing in recovery. You're feeding a small squad. Hannah looked at the second chicken. This one is emotional support. I sat beside her. You've been avoiding me. I'm eating, Hannah said. You eat while threatening people, I reminded her. That saves time, she replied. I showed her the official photograph Beatrix had found for the man listed as Dr. Lucian Harrow. Hannah's appetite paused. That isn't him, she said. The rooftop door opened again. A tall physician entered with 2 attendants. Hannah's shoulders tightened before she looked up. The food in her hand stopped halfway to her mouth. That reaction identified him faster than any database. Dr. Lucian Harrow looked healthy, composed, and far younger than the photograph in Providence's public file. His eyes moved from Hannah to me, then to the bag of chicken. Hannah, Lucian greeted. His voice was gentle enough to make the threat worse. You brought company. I stepped forward before she could answer. Ronan Maddox, D rank. Lucian offered his hand. I shook it and gave him the eager smile of a recruit trying too hard. I came to help catch Declan Wolfe, I told him. I want the kill. Hannah stared at me as though I had grown a second head. Lucian tightened his grip, and his hand trembled for one instant. He felt the strength hidden beneath my relaxed fingers. Then his smile deepened. Ambitious. Hungry, I corrected, glancing at Hannah's food. She kicked my shoe beneath the table. Lucian's attendant handed me an access card with clearance far above D rank. The professor has granted you grace. Never refuse it. The attendant said grace like a threat. Whatever Lucian called it, refusal terrified the people serving him. Lucian led me downstairs as part of his bodyguard circle. Hospital staff opened doors before his hand reached them. Assassins saluted. Patients were moved away from entire corridors. During rounds, I heard him seal every exit. All elderly male patients receive DNA screening, Lucian ordered. Declan cannot leave this building. I walked 2 steps behind him, carrying the card that opened his private floor. You know where this was going. The hunters had invited their target into the command group. Lucian stopped beside an unmarked elevator and touched the access panel. The car descended beneath the registered hospital levels. An underground laboratory opened below us. Rows of restrained bodies filled glass rooms. Some patients wore hospital gowns. Others had Providence tattoos. Monitors tracked strength, healing, pain response, and organ failure. Lucian spread his hands with pride. The hospital removes weak bodies from the population, he explained. I help the useful ones evolve. The word grace finally had a body count. One attendant checked whether I looked impressed, the other checked whether Lucian looked pleased. Neither looked at the restrained patients. The room had trained its staff to read power before suffering, which explained how the laboratory stayed hidden beneath a hospital. One glass room held a man whose muscles had grown around the restraints. Another held a woman whose skin healed every time a technician cut it. Both watched Lucian enter and lowered their eyes. The attendants called them subjects. The hospital tags still called them patients. Lucian stopped beside the strongest cell and asked whether I understood his work. "I understand the locks," I answered. He smiled at the answer. I counted exits. A deformed specimen smashed through a glass door behind him. It ran toward the elevator, dragging tubes across the floor. One attendant froze. Another reached for a gun and could not clear the holster. Lucian stepped forward. His punch went through the laboratory wall. The specimen's head struck the concrete on the other side. It stopped moving before the dust fell. Lucian wiped his hand and resumed speaking in the same calm tone. He offered to accelerate my evolution. I looked at the broken wall, the corpse, and the attendants pretending their breathing had not changed. Direct strength would kill me if I guessed wrong. "I'd like to see more first," I answered. Lucian smiled. Curiosity had kept me close to him, which was exactly where I needed to be. His access card and round schedule gave me a 4.5-minute window that afternoon. At 3:10, Lucian entered surgery. At 3:11, I used his card to enter the office. Beatrix began replacing Ronan Maddox's DNA result. The pathology folder showed a 99.9% match to Declan Wolfe. The alert had not left the hospital yet. I changed the sample label while Beatrix changed the record behind it. Then the office door opened. Lucian had returned early. He closed the door and looked at the folder beneath my hand. "Why are you here, Ronan?" Lucian asked. Beatrix whispered through my earpiece. 30 seconds. I held up the match sheet. "Your teams search age and face. Declan has changed his appearance before. I checked the youngest samples in case he changed a label too." Lucian took the folder, reread the youngest entries, and stepped close enough to crush my throat. Beatrix whispered, "Done." The next page turned green. Ronan Maddox, no match. Lucian studied the result, then pressed his fingers against my cheek, jaw, and temple. He checked skin, muscle, and bone with a doctor's precision. My body was genuinely young. He could feel that. Lucian released me and laughed once. The sound was sharp. He tore the first page in half and dropped it on the desk. "Declan grew old while men like me kept improving," Lucian said. "The world still worships him." His voice had lost its calm. "I gave him no recognition to use." Then Lucian pulled the bookstore incident file from beneath the folder. Hannah Linwood had met Declan Wolfe. She was weak, disposable, and still alive. Lucian pressed the intercom. "Bring Hannah Linwood to me," the professor ordered. The DNA had cleared me. So Lucian reached for the one survivor his records could not explain. The clean DNA result left Lucian one human lead. Hannah, the trainee Declan Wolfe had spared. His office camera recorded the exchange. Hannah entered alone. A silver case sat on the desk between them. Lucian opened it and revealed one sealed syringe filled with pale serum. $3 million, he told her. "One dose can cure Jamie's hemophilia." Hannah's eyes stayed on the case. Providence had spent years charging her for treatment that kept Jamie alive 1 week at a time. Lucian had placed a full future within arm's reach. Then he named the price. "Bring Declan to the main lobby on August 24th at 2 in the afternoon. Hannah looked up. "I don't know where he is." Lucian crossed the room and took her wrist. He bent her arm until the bone broke. Hannah dropped to one knee. Her breath left once, sharp and controlled. She refused to scream for him. Lucian crouched beside her. "You found him once," he murmured. "Find him again. Jamie's medical file remains inside my hospital. So does Jamie." The threat was plain. Deliver Declan and receive the cure. Refuse, and Lucian could reach her brother before she reached the elevator. Hannah held her broken arm against her chest. She agreed to the meeting. Lucian slid the serum case toward her with one finger. Hannah reached for it. He closed the lid before her hand arrived. "Payment after delivery," he told her. The attendant beside the door avoided Hannah's eyes. A nurse in the corridor heard the break and kept walking. Lucian's control worked because everyone around him had learned that compassion created another patient. Hannah rose without help. She gave him the date and time back in a steady voice, forcing him to hear that she understood the terms. Then she carried her own broken arm out of the office. That evening, I entered her hospital room as Ronan Maddox. A cast covered her arm from wrist to shoulder. Hannah sat beside the window with the serum case nowhere in sight and anger packed behind both eyes. "Who did this?" I asked. "Training accident," Hannah said. "Your training accidents usually damage buildings," I replied. She looked away. I saw the pressure marks around the break. A hand had done it. A very strong hand. Hannah placed a folded note on the bed. "Meet me at the hospital clock. August 24th, 2 in the afternoon." "I need help," Hannah said. She could not tell me more while Lucian controlled the room, cameras, and Jamie's treatment, so I took the note. "I'll be there." Hannah's eyes returned to mine. For 1 second, the anger cracked and fear showed through. "Promise?" Hannah asked. "I don't miss appointments," I told her. The morning of August 24th, Lucian filled Providence Medical Center with hidden killers. Beatrix watched the main lobby through the cameras we had already compromised. At 1:50 in the afternoon, Hannah stood beneath the main lobby clock. Her cast had been removed early, but the arm hung stiff beside her. Lucian watched from the upper balcony with his attendants. Patients sat in neat rows. Doctors moved between them. Security guards blocked every exit. Hannah checked her phone. A saved voice message from Jamie played against her ear. "When I get better," Jamie's thin voice said, "we're going to the World Cup. You, me, and all your weird friends." Hannah closed her eyes. The serum could make that ordinary dream possible. At 1:59, Lucian descended the stairs. "Where is Declan?" Lucian asked. The clock reached 2. No old man entered the lobby. The second hand crossed 12. Lucian's hidden shooters adjusted their aim toward the doors. A fake patient folded his newspaper and exposed the pistol beneath it. Hannah saw every movement because I had trained her to read shoulders before weapons. She also saw the empty entrance. For one painful second, she had no proof I understood the second clock. Her choice stood alone. No young man approached Hannah either. Lucian's pleasant expression disappeared. "You failed!" Hannah faced him. "I sent Ronan to the garden clock," Hannah said. The hospital had 2 clocks. The main one stood under Lucian's guns. A smaller clock stood outside in the garden. Hannah had written one meeting and meant the other. She had never planned to deliver me. Lucian stepped closer. "The serum was your brother's only chance." Hannah's voice shook once, then steadied. "Ronan trusted me. I'm not trading my friend for a cure you used as a leash." The lobby stayed quiet. Hannah had chosen while believing the choice would cost Jamie his future. Lucian looked toward his attendants. "Kill her," Lucian ordered. A doctor drew a suppressed pistol. The fire alarm sounded. Red lights began flashing across the lobby. Every public exit locked instead of opening. Real patients panicked and ran toward the doors. Real nurses moved to help them. The people who stayed seated reached beneath coats, wheelchairs, blankets, and medical trays. Their refusal to evacuate identified every assassin in the room. I stepped from behind the garden corridor and stopped beside Hannah. She turned so fast her injured arm struck my chest. "You came. I promised the hospital clock," I told her. "This is the main clock," Hannah said. "I visited the garden first," I replied. Hannah stared at me, and the timing saved the explanation from becoming an argument. I placed her behind a stone column and looked across the false patients. "The alarm was a test," I told her. "Normal people run from fire. Killers wait for orders." One fake nurse raised her pistol. I threw the fountain pen. It entered her wrist and knocked the weapon aside. I crossed the floor, caught the pen before it fell, and drove the metal tip beneath the next attacker's jaw. 2 killers dropped before Lucian finished descending the stairs. The fountain pen had left its first 2 attackers on the lobby floor. It still wrote, technically. Lucian stopped on the balcony above us. Doors opened along every corridor. 100 undertakers, Lucian's private force from South America, entered the hospital. They had been hardened through gang wars and trained to remove bodies Providence wanted forgotten. Their leader spread his arms. 100 men for 1 cub. Lucian looked down at me. "Join me, Ronan. A tiger cub should not die protecting prey." I pulled the pen from the second body and wiped it on the man's sleeve. "Still see a cub?" The first wave charged. They came in ranks of 6, using the hospital columns as cover. The first pair expected me to protect Hannah by staying close. I moved away instead, forcing their formation to split between the target Lucian ordered killed and the boy he wanted captured. Hannah understood and dragged a metal chair behind the column. The chair blocked the first bullet. My pen stopped the shooter responsible. 3 men came through the lobby. I used a steel clipboard to break the first knife angle, struck the second man through the throat with the pen, and drove the third into a medication cart. 2 witnesses reacted immediately. Hannah stopped shielding her injured arm and began tracking the exits for me. Lucian gripped the balcony rail hard enough to bend the metal. The undertakers filled the corridor behind the lobby. One attacker laughed about surviving street wars in South America. Another boasted that Grey Haven looked peaceful. A third asked whether I even understood football. I put the fountain pen through the first man's collar, used his body to block the second, and kicked the third through a display of sports magazines. "Study material," I told him. His boast ended face down on the World Cup issue. More men entered from both sides. Their numbers mattered because the corridor gave them room to rotate. So I retreated toward a fire hose cabinet and let them believe they had pushed me there. The leader saw the wall behind me and shouted, "Cornered!" That confidence lasted until I broke the cabinet glass. I opened the hose at full pressure. The stream hit the first line of attackers and drove them backward into everyone behind them. Shoes lost traction. Weapons skidded across tile. The corridor became a pile of armed men swearing in 3 languages. The hose also blasted open the medicine room door. The trapped nurse pulled 2 patients through it while the killer slid past them. Hannah saw the water spreading toward the emergency station. Her eyes widened. "Ronan! I see it. I ripped a defibrillator from its mount, charged the pads, and dropped them onto the flooded floor. Electric current ran through the water. The corridor convulsed. Men who had survived gunfights fell because a hospital required fire safety and cardiac equipment in the same building. Providence should have consulted an electrician before inviting me. The first mass wave stopped moving. Smoke curled from the defibrillator pads. The men nearest the current lay flat. Those at the edge tried to rise and found the flooded tile had turned every step into another fall. A real nurse emerged from a treatment room and pulled 2 patients behind cover. She looked at me, looked at the bodies dressed as hospital staff, and chose to help the civilians without asking which side wore the official badge. Lucian watched that choice from above. His hospital had stopped obeying him one person at a time. Lucian's attendant stepped away from the balcony rail. The Undertaker leader checked the hallway behind him for an exit that was still locked. The flooded corridor held the first wave, but half the force remained upstairs, and Hannah was trapped near the center of the building. I handed her the empty fire hose nozzle. "Can you move?" I asked Hannah. "With one arm," she replied. "Use your eyes! Call the angles!" I told her. Hannah nodded. We advanced together. Hannah stayed 1 pace behind my left shoulder. Her injured arm could not strike, so she used the fire hose nozzle to hook ankles and move weapons out of reach. Every call she made changed my route. Every correct route gave her more confidence. An Undertaker rushed her to force me back. Hannah read his hip, stepped outside the charge, and caught his neck with the hose line. One working arm held him open long enough for the pen to arrive. "Good eyes," I told her. "Terrible timing for praise," Hannah snapped. She spotted a rifle barrel behind a pharmacy sign before I saw the shooter. I bounced the pen off the metal frame and forced his shot high. She kicked his knee as I passed. Another team rushed through the imaging corridor. Hannah counted 4 reflections in the dark monitor glass. 2 left, 1 low, 1 behind the door, Hannah called. I entered before the door finished opening. The fountain pen moved from hand to hand, throat to wrist, artery to tendon. I used carts, privacy curtains, oxygen stands, and 1 rolling stool that deserved a promotion. The Undertakers kept talking because silence would admit fear. One man promised to hang my pen above his fireplace. Another offered the leader money for the first strike. 3 minutes later, the first man was using his sleeve to stop bleeding, and the second had crawled behind a diagnostic machine. Their voices had gone from boasting to counting exits. The leader heard the change and doubled down. He ordered everyone forward at once, sacrificing formation for the appearance of courage. Villain management by panic. Their jokes about South America grew shorter. Their formation grew wider. Their leader stopped calling me a cub and started calling for explosives. I drew a quick neck sketch on the back of a patient chart and held it up to Hannah. "The carotid root," I told her. "Every man exposes it when he raises the right shoulder." She watched the next attacker lift his knife. "Now!" Hannah called. The pen struck exactly where she pointed. Her face changed. She had seen that timing before. At Coyle's restaurant. In Duncan's warehouse. In every Providence story about Declan Wolfe turning ordinary objects into weapons. The final Undertakers barricaded themselves near the elevators. Their leader ordered a simultaneous charge. They had watched every improvised tool work against them, so they stripped the corridor bare. Charts went over the rail. Carts were kicked aside. One man even tore the pen tray from the wall. They believed removing objects would remove my weapons. I still had the fountain pen, their own blades, and 100 bodies changing the available angles. First-class skill was never about owning the room. It was about noticing what arrogance left inside it. I let them build the line. Hannah called each raised shoulder in order. The pen flashed once for every opening before their formation reached us. A man near the rear threw his knife. I bent the patient chart, caught the blade inside its metal clip, and sent it back along the same line. Another attacker used a gurney as a moving shield. I struck the wheel lock with the pen. The gurney stopped. Every man pushing it kept going and folded over the frame. The leader finally reached me with a machete in both hands. He had spent 13 minutes watching his army fail and still believed a larger weapon would fix the problem. I stepped inside the swing and put the fountain pen beneath his jaw. His radio rolled to Hannah's shoe. A voice on the other end kept asking for a status report. 13 minutes after the first attack, the 100th Undertaker hit the floor. The lobby clock showed exactly 13 minutes since Lucian's execution order. The same clock that measured Hannah's betrayal deadline now measured the destruction of his private army. A real patient peeked from behind the registration desk. The nurse beside him lowered a bloodied tray. Lucian's surviving attendants backed away from the balcony rail. Hannah looked across the hospital at the fallen force. Then she looked at the fountain pen in my hand. "Ronan," she whispered. "Who are you?" I did not answer. The ceiling above the lobby cracked. Lucian dropped from the upper level and landed hard enough to shatter the tile beneath both feet. 100 men were down. The professor had decided to handle me himself. Lucian landed in the ruined lobby and cracked the floor beneath him. The 100 undertakers were down. Hannah stood behind a stone column with one working arm. I held a fountain pen that had already done more field work than most Providence agents. Lucian looked across his fallen force. Then he smiled. The smile told me the army had been a screening test. He still believed the real experiment was beginning. I stepped into the open. "Come down and trade punches!" Hannah stared at me. One surviving attendant near the stairs stared harder. Lucian laughed. "You killed my cubs and still misunderstand the animal in front of you." He moved before the last word ended. His fist struck my forearms and launched me through a pharmacy wall. Shelves burst around me. I hit the floor, rolled beneath the next punch, and watched his knuckles bury themselves in concrete. Raw strength beyond normal training. The pharmacy wall had been reinforced for controlled medicine storage. Lucian's punch left a shoulder-wide hole through it. The impact told me his power, reach, and preferred follow-through in one ugly measurement. He expected the sight of that hole to make me retreat. I stepped closer and cut him. His eyes brightened. The professor wanted a specimen that resisted. I had just made myself irresistible. I cut his wrist with the pen. Lucian looked at the line, flexed once, and hit faster. He grabbed an unconscious undertaker by the ankle and swung the man like a club. I ducked the first pass. The body struck a support column. Lucian reversed the swing and caught me across the ribs on the return. I crossed the lobby and hit the elevator doors hard enough to bend them inward. Hannah shouted my name. Lucian followed, tore the doors apart, and drove me into the elevator car. The cables snapped. The car dropped. Metal screamed around me as the elevator fell several floors and struck the bottom of the shaft. Above, Lucian looked through the broken doors and waited. The attendant beside him released the breath he had been holding. Hannah moved toward the shaft, but Lucian caught her injured arm and stopped her. "Your friend is dead," he told her. Beatrix's voice came through Hannah's earpiece from the remote control room. "No," she said. "He's measuring." Hannah pressed the receiver closer. Beatrix had known me before Providence called us legends. Father Malachi once ordered the children of Providence House to split boulders with bare hands. Most struck until their knuckles opened, then chose smaller stones. I kept hitting the largest one. The others mocked me because the surface barely changed. When the instructors rolled it away, they found a field of shattered rocks behind it. Every missed strike had passed through the target and broken something farther back. Persistence was never pretty. It was still there when the elevator doors opened. I climbed from the wreck without a mark on my face. Lucian's attendant took 2 steps backward. Hannah's knees nearly gave out from relief, then she caught herself against the wall. I brushed dust from my shoulder. "Sorry, I took a nap." Lucian's smile tightened. The fight was getting boring. He had thrown me through walls, used his own men as weapons, and dropped an elevator on me. I had spent the beating blocking, redirecting, and learning the rhythm beneath his strength. Now I had the measurement. Lucian favored his right leg before every explosive step. His left shoulder rose before the crushing grab. The elevator attack revealed how he transferred force through the spine. I had paid for those facts with several walls and one very expensive car. Hannah saw me roll the damaged shoulder once and understood the nap line had been a performance. Her relief turned into focus. She began calling the pieces of broken floor behind Lucian so I could use them without looking. I crossed the lobby and punched him through the same wall he had broken with my body. Lucian struck a treatment room, bounced off a steel cabinet, and landed among scattered instruments. The attendant at the stairs dropped his radio. Hannah watched Lucian rise with blood at the corner of his mouth, and his confidence finally disappeared. I followed. Every blow I had withheld came back in order. A hook to the ribs for the pharmacy wall, an elbow beneath the chin for the human club, a straight punch through the chest for the elevator. Lucian tried to guard high. I slapped him across the face. He turned with the impact. I slapped him back. He snarled and threw a wide punch. I stepped inside and slapped him a third time. Some debts require accounting. Others require open palms. Hannah covered her mouth. The surviving attendant looked away from his apostle as though witnessing a private family argument. Lucian crashed through another wall and stayed down for 3 breaths. Then his body changed. He stood and tore away the shredded medical coat. Thick muscle crowded his shoulders, chest, and back in uneven layers. Old surgical seams crossed his skin. One detail was missing from the front of his torso. Hannah blinked. "Does he have?" "No," I answered. Lucian had redesigned himself past several normal features and never bothered restoring them. One body horror observation was enough. The next punch could kill me. He injected a clear drug into his neck. The cuts on his wrist and face closed. His muscles grew denser around every damaged area. Lucian spread his arms. "Every injury improves me. Pain teaches the body. My medicine makes the lesson immediate." His rule was simple. Damage created adaptation. The more I hit him, the stronger the repaired tissue became. Lucian demonstrated by cutting his own forearm with a scalpel. The line closed while we watched. The repaired muscle tightened, thicker than before. His attendant smiled again, relieved that the Apostle's rule had finally become visible. Then Lucian punched a steel cabinet he had hit during my counterattack. The door folded farther than his first strike managed. The rule was real, measurable, and terrible. Every honest attempt to injure him paid him back with interest. Lucian charged again. His speed had increased with the muscle. He caught my throat in one hand and lifted me from the floor. The grip tightened. I wedged both hands between his fingers and my neck. The pressure crushed inward fast enough to darken the edges of my vision. I broke the hold in less than a second. A full second would have killed me. That condition changed the fight. I could survive his fists. I could not allow another clean grip. Lucian smiled at the marks on my throat. Beg, and I'll preserve the brain. I rolled my shoulders. A rude child needs discipline. He roared and came forward. I struck his triceps, calf, shoulder, and lower back. Each hit landed on a different movement chain. Lucian absorbed them with growing pleasure. The damaged areas swelled, his arm became thicker, his thigh pushed against the torn trousers. His neck widened until turning his head required his entire torso. Hannah watched the expansion and shouted, "You're making him stronger!" "I know." Lucian heard me, laughed, and opened his arms for more. Then he caught my kick beneath one arm. "There," he said, gripping my ankle. "Now I dissect the leg." He tried to twist. His fingers moved. His elbow did not. Lucian pulled again. The arm remained locked against his side. His smile faded. I lowered my captured foot to the floor. Every accelerated repair had added muscle without regulation. The tissue around his nerves and bones kept growing. His stronger arm had compressed the pathways controlling it. His enlarged thigh trapped its own movement. The neck built to resist damage had started choking the vessels feeding his brain. Strength had filled the available space. The body could no longer function inside itself. Lucian tried to step and nearly fell. Hannah saw his hand shaking. The attendant by the stairs looked from the frozen apostle to me and ran. I did not stop him. Fear carried news faster than threats. Lucian's knees locked. He remained upright only because his joints had become rigid. "You planned this," he gasped. "You announced the rule." His perfect adaptive body had become a prison built one punch at a time. Lucian tried to flex the trapped arm until veins rose beneath the skin. Each attempt tore more tissue. His drug repaired it, added more bulk, and locked the arm tighter. Hannah saw the logic and stepped from cover. "He can't move." Lucian turned his whole torso toward her because his neck no longer rotated. The humiliation reached him before the fear. A trainee he had broken was now explaining his failure aloud. The professor refused to end there. He bit through a seal on a rainbow-colored injector and drove it into his chest. Beatrix recognized the compound from Lucian's lab records. "Declan," she warned through my earpiece, "that dose restores nerve activity for 3 minutes. It kills the host when the timer ends." Lucian's limbs jerked. Then they moved. The swollen body regained speed, strength, and control at once. His pupils widened. Veins rose beneath the skin. Every remaining second of his life had become fuel. 3 minutes. No second chance. Beatrix started the countdown in my ear. Hannah heard it through the shared channel. Lucian heard none of it, but the clock on the laboratory wall sat directly behind me. He watched the seconds and attacked as though killing me could negotiate with chemistry. At 2 minutes 40 seconds, his first punch shattered the restraint table. Lucian had been born sickly, and every childhood failure of his own body had become another reason to hate weakness. At 2 minutes 30, his return swing missed my throat by the width of the fountain pen. He had learned medicine faster than his teachers, and treated the physician's oath like a rule for lesser people. At 2 minutes 20, the overgrown leg tore its own tendon and kept moving under the drug. Lucian hit me before Beatrix finished counting. I crossed the treatment room, rolled through broken glass, and rose as his heel split the floor. "Nature makes mistakes," Lucian shouted. "I correct them." His first living dissection had ended his legal career. He punctuated the confession by driving a fist through another wall. 2 minutes remained. I cut his knee with the fountain pen. The drug forced the leg to compensate, but the overgrown tissue tore under its own force. Lucian kept coming. South America had given him stronger victims, criminal protection, and enough bodies to turn medicine into selection. He caught my shoulder and threw me through the laboratory entrance. I landed beside the silver serum case he had shown Hannah. One syringe remained inside. I saw it. Lucian saw me see it. He kicked the case away and charged. 90 seconds. Lucian drove both hands into the floor and ripped up a slab of concrete. He threw it across the laboratory. I used the hanging chain to change its angle, and the slab destroyed the cabinet holding his spare injectors. The professor saw the spare medicine shatter. His eyes flicked toward it once. Then he shoved the broken cabinet aside and charged me again. I used the pen to open a hanging restraint. The steel chain dropped around his forearm. Lucian tore it free, but the movement pulled his enlarged shoulder past its safe range. The joint failed. He attacked with the other hand. I stepped beneath it and drove repeated strikes along the swollen ribs, forcing the body to repair tissue it no longer had room to hold. 60 seconds. Hannah reached the serum case and kicked it away from the collapsing wall. Lucian noticed and changed direction toward her. I struck the compressed nerve beside his hip. His leg folded before he covered half the distance. He crawled up using one working arm and called Hannah ungrateful. She held the serum case against her chest and answered, "You priced my brother. That was your mistake." Lucian roared and spent another 10 seconds standing. Lucian's skin split along old surgical seams. His breathing turned uneven. The spare medicine burned behind him, and he still grabbed for my throat. I caught the wrist, rotated beneath the stiff elbow, and drove him face first into the floor. 30 seconds. Lucian forced his head up. "Who are you?" I used the stance Coyle had recognized, followed by the hand position every original apostle learned from me. Lucian's face changed. "Declan Wolfe," he whispered. 65 years, I told him. "That's the difference between research and work." I struck the central mass of overgrown tissue beneath his chest. The force traveled through muscle already crushing bone and nerve. Lucian's body failed from the inside. The timer reached 0. For one instant, the drug kept his body upright after the heart stopped. Then, every enlarged joint released at once. Lucian collapsed beside the laboratory table where he had planned to dissect me. Hannah watched the man who broke her arm collapse. The fountain pen rolled beside Lucian's medical badge. Beatrix paused for one breath, then sent her remote team into the archive. Secure doors opened. Providence identity records began disappearing while the surviving patients and staff escaped. The fight had killed Lucian. The deletion kept Providence from using his archive after him. Big Kells and Little Kells emerged from a stairwell after hiding from the final exchange behind an overturned vending machine. Big Kells surveyed the destroyed lobby. "We softened them up." Little Kells nodded. "Ronan finished our setup." Hannah looked at their untouched clothes, then at my torn shirt. "They'll write songs about your courage," she told them. Both brothers accepted the compliment. Hannah did not join the celebration. The laboratory had burned. Lucian was dead. The silver serum case appeared lost beneath the collapse. Hannah searched the rubble with one hand until dust covered her uniform. Big Kells lifted the wrong steel panel. Little Kells found an empty syringe box and finally stopped boasting. Hannah kept digging. She had chosen me over Jamie's only known cure. I waited until we reached the ambulance bay. Then I placed the sealed syringe in her uninjured hand. I had taken it during Lucian's final charge and hidden it inside my coat. Hannah stared at the label. Her fingers closed around the case with painful care. "Jamie?" she whispered. "He has a chance." I stopped talking. Hannah pressed the serum against her chest and lowered her head. I stood beside her until she could breathe again. Killing one apostle did not end the war. It sent the next apostle toward the one man I still called my brother. Lucian's death created an empty apostle seat and a public ruin. Providence could not hide. The hospital's surviving security feed showed what arrived next. Lenora Faye stepped through the broken lobby wearing a dark coat and a smile that belonged at the start of somebody else's bad decision. Providence called her the Sword Phantom. She held the Blade Apostle seat and treated fear as personal etiquette. A cleanup investigator looked at Lucian's body and muttered, "Declan Wolfe really is a ghost." Lenora touched his neck. The man collapsed before he finished breathing. Lenora's companion watched without reacting. The feed never showed him using a weapon. Lenora looked into the ruined camera. "Ghosts still leave people behind," she said. Then the picture died. 3 days later, Gareth assigned our team volunteer work 500 miles from Greyhaven. Big Kells stared at the order. "We killed assassins and rescued a chairman's son." Little Kells read the second line. "They want us to repair desks." Gareth folded the paper. "Try surviving manual labor." The assignment sent us to Harborlight School, a poor coastal campus supported by donations. The buildings leaned toward the ocean as though considering escape. I accepted immediately. Hannah noticed. "You hate chores." "I hate other people's chores. That distinction sounds suspicious," Hannah said. Harborlight hid someone I had been trying to find for years. Ms. Elodie March met us at the gate. She taught nearly every subject the school lacked staff to cover and looked far too elegant for a courtyard full of broken furniture. Big Kells forgot how bags worked. Little Kells took both her boxes, then took Big Kells's box too. Ms. March smiled. "You two are very helpful." The brothers became unpaid labor with religious commitment. A gray-haired caretaker watched them from beside the toolshed. He wore patched clothes, told terrible jokes, and moved with the relaxed balance of someone who never wasted weight. He pointed at the brothers carrying 6 chairs. "Strong students," he said. "Charitable too." Nobody laughed. The caretaker laughed for us. Hannah leaned toward me. "Is this the dangerous person you came to find?" His jokes might qualify. We spent the morning repairing doors and replacing cracked boards. Big Kells hammered everything within 10 feet of Ms. March. Little Kells measured the same shelf 4 times because she had praised his accuracy. Their crush turned 2 lazy assassins into model volunteers. Providence should have tried compliments before Hell Month. The children noticed immediately. One boy asked Big Kells to lift a desk with one hand. He lifted 2 and checked whether Ms. March had seen. Little Kells repaired a window latch, failed the first attempt, and started again after she thanked him for caring. Hannah helped younger students sort donated books. I watched the caretaker from across the courtyard. He swept in straight lines, never exposed his back to the gate, and caught a falling hammer without looking. The harmless cover kept leaking competence in tiny drops. He caught me watching and raised the broom. "I'm sweeping you off your feet," Hannah groaned. The children laughed. The caretaker's bad jokes had an audience after all. The school's real problem arrived after lunch. 3 local gangsters entered the yard and demanded the month's protection payment. The largest man kicked over a donation box. Another cornered Ms. March against the classroom wall and suggested she could pay differently. The Kells brothers dropped their tools. Big Kells stepped between the man and Ms. March. "Heroes protect teachers." Little Kells pointed at the gate. "Villains leave before the soundtrack changes." The speech needed work. Their choice did not. The gangsters attacked. The leader swung the steel pipe at Big Kell's head. Big Kells caught it, saw 3 children behind the attacker, and released the counter that would have sent the man through a window. The hesitation opened his ribs. Little Kells disarmed the knife near Ms. March, but a second gangster used the donation table as a shield and struck him from the side. The brothers kept moving the fight away from the classroom doors. Every restrained choice cost them another hit. The gang leader mistook restraint for weakness and started performing for the children. He kicked the broken donation box toward Ms. March and promised to return with more men. That promise gave me the address I needed later. Ms. March stepped between the gang and the students even after the threat turned toward her. The caretaker's hand moved once toward the sword hidden inside his broom, then stopped when he saw me watching. He was protecting the cover and trusting us to choose the school over pride. Big Kells restrained his first punch because children watched from the windows. Little Kells pulled a knife hand away from Ms. March instead of breaking it. That restraint cost them. A steel pipe struck Big Kells across the back. 2 men dragged Little Kells down and kicked him beneath the ribs. The brothers could have escalated with lethal force. They chose the school's safety over their pride and lost the fight in public. Ms. March knelt beside them after the gang left. Her hands shook as she pressed cloth against Little Kell's brow. The children stopped watching from the windows and came outside with water. Big Kells stopped pretending he was fine. Little Kells let Ms. March see how badly he hurt. The caretaker gave us shelter in a storage building while the brothers recovered. I sat beside Big Kells that evening. "You did well," he looked offended. "We lost. You kept knives away from the children and didn't turn the schoolyard into a crime scene." Little Kells opened one swollen eye. "So we passed?" "This was volunteer work," both brothers groaned. Still, the praise landed. Big Kells stopped hiding his pain. Little Kells let Ms. March replace the bandage without performing heroics for her. After midnight, Hannah found me beneath the stars behind the school. The ocean wind pulled at her jacket. She held the sealed serum case in one hand. "Jamie has the chance you gave him," she said. The syringe remained sealed while his doctors prepared. Hope was real. The result was still unknown. Hannah looked at me. "You knew what I did with the clocks." "I went to both," I told Hannah. "You came back anyway," she said. "You were standing in a lobby full of armed doctors," I replied. "That isn't an answer," Hannah said. "It's the reason," I told her. She stepped closer. "Are you connected to Declan Wolfe?" The question had lived between us since Coyle's restaurant. I could hear the caretaker moving inside the shed behind us. He had been listening to my breathing all day. "I'll tell you," I promised Hannah, "after this place is safe." She studied my face, then nodded once. Her question had not gone away. Hannah returned to the storage building. The caretaker waited until her footsteps faded. "You smell like blood," he said from the darkness. I turned. A sword rested against my throat. The harmless old man held it with one hand. His balance had changed. The bad jokes were gone. "I came to find Eamon Keel," I told him. "The spinning saint, greatest swordsman Providence ever produced." The caretaker's eyes hardened. "Eamon died years ago," the caretaker said. I shifted my left foot into the opening stance I had taught a younger boy at Providence House. His blade moved before his face did. The sword drove me backward through the doorway. I caught the flat with 2 fingers, redirected the edge, and stepped inside his guard. Eamon changed angles 3 times. I answered all 3. He stopped. His eyes searched my face and found nothing familiar. Then he watched my breathing. He listened to the pause before my right step. He smelled the old habit of gun oil beneath fresh soap. He saw the sword response he had learned from one man. The blade lowered. Eamon planted it in the ground and bowed to a teenager. "Elder brother," Eamon said. "Everyone else had needed a photograph." Eamon needed one breath. I placed a hand on his shoulder. For several seconds, neither of us moved. For several seconds, I forgot every lie attached to Ronan Maddox. He was alive. The school existed. Something from Providence House had survived without becoming a weapon. Eamon looked up and laughed through wet eyes. You got younger. You got worse at jokes. That proves it's you, Eamon said. We sat inside the caretaker's room until dawn. Eamon poured tea with the same left-handed habit he had used as a boy. He placed my cup farther from the door and kept the dangerous seat for himself. He asked how the old body died. I told him about the park, the rain, and Providence using my own money as bounty. Eamon's hand closed around the cup until the ceramic cracked. Give me the name at the top, Eamon said. I'm still climbing toward it. Then climb faster. That sounded like the boy I remembered. When we were children, Eamon wanted to attend a normal school. I promised we would build one for abandoned kids someday. He showed me Harbor Light's first ledger. His entire mission savings had bought 6 desks, food, books, medicine, and shoes for children. Providence would have discarded. The repaired room around us proved the rest. I told him Coyle and Lucian were dead. I also told him Father Malachi's adopted successor had seized Providence and turned our old home into a cartel. Years earlier, Eamon wanted to rebel the moment that usurper rose. I stopped him because the move would have killed everyone still loyal to us. Now Eamon reached for the sword by his wall. Call me, he said. I'll fight beside you. I pointed through the window. One child had fallen asleep with a book across his chest. Muddy shoes waited beside a repaired desk. You already chose your battlefield, I told him. Eamon followed my gaze. His hand left the sword. He promised to protect Harbor Light first and answer me only when the children were secure. That promise made leaving possible. Before we left Harbor Light, I handled the local gang. I found their 3 men at a waterfront storage yard and placed the steel pipe they had used on Big Kells across their table. The leader laughed until I bent it around his chair. Then I named every route they used near the school. One man backed into a stack of crates. The leader stopped laughing. Leave Ms. March and the school alone, I told him. He repeated the promise while staring at the pipe wrapped around his chair. I left before he could ask what happened if he broke it. At the school gate, Eamon promised to come whenever I called. I told him to keep his sword near and his children nearer. Hannah watched us part and understood that the caretaker had recognized something she still could not name. We drove away under a darkening sky. That night, a violent storm reached Harbor Light School. Harbor Light's security cameras kept recording after we left. By the next morning, I had watched the storm footage enough times to know every second I should have been there. Frame by frame, Beatrix found a faint aerosol drifting from Lenora's coat into the rain around Eamon. Rain hammered the school after midnight. Eamon stood beneath the front awning with his sword already drawn. Lenora Faye crossed the courtyard without an umbrella. Lenora's companion followed several steps behind, hands empty, expression bored. Lenora smiled at the caretaker. Eamon Keel, former apostle, greatest swordsman alive. Eamon looked toward the sleeping dormitory before he looked at her. Take this away from the children, Eamon said. Lenora drew her blade. The duel tore through the courtyard, crossed the school roof, and entered the forest beyond the rear fence. Eamon moved first to pull danger away from Harbor Light. Even after years without serious training, his sword cut rain from the air and forced Lenora backward between the trees. She attacked from blind angles. He met each strike. Lenora cut low, high, then reversed through the rain before the blade finished its first path. Eamon used the flat of his sword to redirect each line away from the school. A missed strike split the handrail behind him. Another opened the roof tiles where his foot had been. The companion walked through falling debris without raising his hands. Rain touched his coat and seemed to darken before reaching the ground. Eamon noticed. His next retreat placed 2 trees between himself and the silent man. Their blades sparked against wet bark. One camera caught Eamon slicing a falling branch into 4 pieces before it touched the ground. Lenora laughed through the pressure. Retirement made you slow. Eamon's breathing had already grown heavy. He admitted the truth. Years spent repairing desks and protecting children had taken the edge from his body. Still, his eyes kept shifting past Lenora toward her companion. The man never entered the duel. That made him the greater concern. Eamon reached an open section of forest and changed his stance. The spinning saint read the movement of air, sound, water, and vibration. Rain striking leaves became a map. Wind around steel announced an attack before the blade arrived. He closed his eyes. Then he moved. The camera lost the sword. Trees split around Lenora. Her coat opened across the shoulder. Invisible lines seemed to cut her from every direction as Eamon turned the storm itself into information. For one instant, Lenora stood inside a field of slashes she could not escape. The storm cameras caught 3 separate versions of Eamon in the same frame because the shutter could not follow his turns. Lenora's sleeve split. A strand of hair floated away. Her companion finally lifted his head. Eamon heard the change in the rain around her body and drove the final cut through the center of that space. Any normal opponent would have fallen in pieces. Eamon lowered his blade. The footage made it look finished. Then blood appeared across his stomach. He touched the wound and looked down. Lenora stood several feet away without a mark. Her perfume had entered the rain and air around him, the scent corrupted the same senses his technique depended upon. Eamon had read false wind, false distance, false impacts. His perfect victory had happened inside poisoned perception. He closed his eyes tighter and cut by sound. Lenora's voice came from his left. Her blade entered from the right. Eamon turned, but the companion touched a tree behind him. The trunk collapsed into dark rot beneath the man's fingers, changing the sound of the entire forest. Eamon's map failed again. Lenora cut his sword arm, then his leg. He fell beside the tree line, still trying to face the school. The footage ended when the companion destroyed the camera post. A second camera near the service road caught Lenora's companion carrying Eamon's unconscious body away while Lenora dragged his sword behind her. The next morning, Ms. March stopped answering messages. Big Kells noticed first because he had sent her 4 photographs of the repaired shelf. Little Kells had sent 6. Neither received a reply. I checked the weather alerts, the dead school cameras, and the silence from Eamon's private line. My humor stopped there. Big Kells lowered his phone without another message. Little Kells deleted the joke he had been typing. Hannah saw my face and stopped asking whether the cameras could be repaired. Beatrix played the service road clip once. I made her play it again. The second viewing changed nothing. Eamon was unconscious. Lenora had his sword. The route led toward the coast. I had left him because I believed protecting the school was safer than joining me. Lenora had turned that choice into a target. Beatrix met me beneath the Greyhaven shelter. She had already traced one Providence informant connected to Harborlight. I found him in the service tunnel before he reached the street. He raised both hands. I only carried a phone. I took it from him. Lenora answered on the second ring. Declan? She asked. You touched my brother. Her laugh came softly through the speaker. Then come collect him. I will. I made one promise and kept every word plain. When I reach you, the pain will be slow enough for you to understand it. Lenora stopped laughing. I ended the call and turned toward Beatrix. She had found the Wraith Cruise, Lenora's moving black market auction ship. The vessel operated beyond ordinary ports. Weapons, poison, stolen research, and human lives crossed its stage. Lenora ruled it as private law. Benedict Carrington held an invitation. That debt from Moscow opened the only clean route aboard. By evening, I stood on Benedict's yacht wearing the suit of a young bodyguard. Big Kells and Little Kells came as service staff because nobody looks closely at men carrying cleaning supplies. The brothers had objected to the disguises until Benedict explained the ship's tipping culture. Big Kells adjusted his apron. Undercover wealth operation. Little Kells nodded. High-risk hospitality. Benedict watched the Wraith Cruise rise from the dark water ahead. Lenora and her companion once massacred 2,000 people. Do you know how? No, Benedict answered. At least he was honest. Fake briefings only make the first body more surprising. We boarded beneath gold lights and armed security. Every guest surrendered ordinary weapons at the entrance and received a numbered invitation pin. The search was theater. Hidden blades remained everywhere, and the guards carried enough rifles to turn the ballroom into a siege. Benedict entered as a billionaire buyer. I walked one step behind as his bodyguard. The Kells brothers vanished into staff traffic before the first security camera completed its sweep. Their ridiculous uniforms made them invisible in a room where everyone else wanted to be seen. The first public lesson arrived near the entrance bar. A drunken executive grabbed an attendant and shoved her against a table. When security approached, he insulted Lenora's Blade Apostle title and demanded she serve him personally. Lenora touched his shoulder. The executive convulsed. His glass shattered in his hand. Guards dragged him to the rail and threw him into the ocean while every guest watched. The attendant straightened her uniform and walked away. A bidder beside Benedict lowered his voice. Another guest released the woman he had been holding by the wrist. The executive surfaced once and grabbed the rail. A deck guard pushed his fingers back into the water. The auction guests returned to their drinks with improved manners. Big Kells and Little Kells disappeared into the service corridors with mops and towels. Within 20 minutes, a guest tipped them more than a normal D-rank mission paid. Big Kells stared at the cash. I've discovered my calling. Little Kells checked the next cabin number. Assassination lacks customer appreciation. Their greed gave them access to guest rooms, kitchens, engine passages, storage decks, and every staff route on the vessel. Each guest treated them like furniture and spoke freely while they cleaned. The brothers overheard launch schedules, security rotations, and which buyers carried private access bans. Their lowest status disguise produced the highest value map on the ship. The joke had bought us a ship map. The auction began in the central hall. The first major lot was a biochemical weapon capable of killing thousands. A group of armed bidders challenged the sale and accused Lenora of exaggerating its value. Her companion walked down from the stage. He touched the first man's face. Skin darkened and collapsed beneath his fingertips. The second bidder raised a pistol. The companion caught the barrel and the metal warped under his hand before the man's face failed the same way. The remaining guards lowered their weapons. One bidder vomited beneath his chair, another raised his price without being asked. The companion returned to Lenora's side without speaking. His touch destroyed living tissue and metal. I still lacked the mechanism. The bodies made the danger clear. The auction host continued the sale while workers removed the bodies. No one demanded an explanation. The surviving challengers bid against each other for the same weapon they had called fake. Lenora's companion never looked at the price. He watched her instead, and she rewarded him with one small smile. He treated it like payment. Lenora announced one final secret item reserved for a special guest. While the auction continued, I checked the public corridors, guest decks, and medical entrance for any sign of Eamon. Every route ended at another locked service door. Still no sign of Eamon. Near the dining balcony, Lenora cornered Benedict. "Chairman Carrington," she purred, "join me for dinner." She placed one hand on his arm. I stepped between them and removed it. "His schedule is full." Lenora finally looked at my face with real interest. "Then you can come instead," Lenora said. Her eyes traveled over the suit. She was beautiful, dangerous, and fully aware that both facts belonged in the same trap. "Leave the belt," Lenora added. "I dislike formal restraints." A bidder near us grinned. Benedict glanced at me once. Then Lenora's perfume reached me. Warmth spread behind my eyes. Distance softened. Her fingers brushed my wrist, and for half a second my hand wanted to follow hers. I dug one nail into an old pressure point and broke the chemical drift. "Dinner sounds expensive," I told her. Lenora leaned closer. "I'm worth it!" She was, which made the trap worse. Big Kells and Little Kells rushed around the corner carrying towels. Both stopped when they saw Lenora touching me. Big Kells whispered, "Ronan has entered a boss fight." Little Kells whispered louder, "Without armor." Their interruption broke the contact. Big Kells placed himself between Lenora and the towels, as though protecting valuable linen. Little Kells asked whether she needed turn-down service. Lenora looked at the cleaners, then at the watching bidders. She laughed and let me go. My head cleared the moment her fingers left me. Lenora's companion watched me release her hand. His bored expression tightened. Jealousy or suspicion, maybe both. Lenora noticed and smiled wider. "I escorted Benedict away." Beatrix pushed a stolen cabin recording into my earpiece moments later. Lenora and her companion were discussing Lucian's death. A dying 65-year-old should not have cleared the hospital. They suspected a younger imposter was moving toward Providence's apostles. They were finally asking the right question. They still lacked my name. Lenora wanted to pull the answer from me. Her companion wanted the uncertainty dead before she became more interested. Beatrix warned that jealousy could make him move without Lenora's order. I finished checking the last public corridor and found every visible room empty. Back in the auction hall, the host sold a painting and dimmed the lights. Lenora stepped onto the stage. "The final item," she announced, "was prepared for one special person in this audience. I had found the ship, the woman, and the poison in her smile. I still had not found my brother." The final auction announcement forced me toward the one place Lenora wanted me watching. Before I returned to the hall, I made one last sweep as a waiter. I crossed the kitchen, service corridors, and engine room in order. A guard stopped me beside cold storage and demanded an employee code. He looked at my face and laughed. "They're hiring every Asian kid with a tray now?" I handed him the tray. He checked it for a weapon. I stepped behind him while his eyes stayed on the plates and put him to sleep against the freezer door. A second guard found me near the engines. He laughed at the young employee carrying wine instead of a weapon. The bottle struck his wrist. The cork entered the alarm switch. The serving cloth closed around his throat before the glass touched the floor. Anything could become a weapon. The Wraith crews had stocked an excellent selection. Still, every locked room was empty. I used the second guard's keycard on the medical corridor. 3 doors opened onto unused treatment rooms. A fourth held restraints, fresh bandages, and blood on the floor. The chair marks led toward the auction lift. Eamon had been there, and Lenora had moved him minutes before I arrived. That left one place to look, the stage. I could reach him only if my face stayed calm. I returned to the auction hall as a painting sold for more money than Harbor Light School needed for 10 years. The host cleared the stage. Lenora stood beside a covered display and looked across the guests, one face at a time. "This final item is unique," she announced. "It was prepared for one person here." The cover dropped. Every light in the hall turned toward the display. The music stopped. Even the waiters froze at the walls because Lenora wanted silence around my reaction. Benedict shifted half a step closer before he saw the captive. He had already understood the trap shape. When the cover fell, his hand found the bidding paddle before mine found a weapon. Eamon sat bound to a steel chair beneath the lights. His sword arm hung broken. Cuts crossed his clothes. One eye had swollen shut. The man who once read a storm through a blade had been cleaned, dressed, and displayed like merchandise. My hand tightened around the serving tray. I stopped before the metal bent. Lenora was watching for the one person who reacted like family. Her gaze moved through the crowd. It reached me. For one beat, my anger slipped. The air around my body changed. Lenora's smile sharpened because she felt it. Benedict stepped in front of me and asked a bidder about the painting. The ordinary question broke her line of sight. Eamon raised his head. The lights hid my face. His breathing still changed as though he recognized the room's tension. Lenora placed one hand on his shoulder. "Opening bid," she said. $10 million. Nobody moved. The guests had come to buy weapons, poison, and stolen secrets. Buying a captured apostle meant buying Lenora's anger. She drew a narrow blade. "If no one bids before I count 5, I kill him," Lenora said. The rule was simple. $10 million or death. 5 counts. No extension. I could reach the stage before the blade entered Eamon. I could not do it without revealing my interest, my skill, and likely my identity to every Providence buyer on the ship. My accounts were empty. Providence had taken the $60 million that could have bought him. Lenora began. She held the blade against the uninjured side of Eamon's neck and watched the audience rather than him. Every number forced me to choose between my cover and my brother. Eamon understood too. He straightened as much as the restraints allowed and kept his good eye away from the crowd. The refusal to search for me was his last act of protection. 1, Lenora counted. My weight shifted forward. Benedict's hand closed around my wrist beneath the table. 2, Lenora said. The sword phantom watched me instead of the crowd. 3, Lenora counted. Eamon lifted his chin. He would rather die than call for me. 4, Lenora said. I started to move. The distance to the stage was 12 steps. 3 guards watched the center aisle. Lenora's companion stood within touching range of Eamon's chair. I calculated 4 routes and rejected all 4 because each saved my brother by revealing the exact monster Providence wanted. My heel left the floor. A bidding paddle rose beside my face. $20 million, Benedict Carrington announced. The room erupted. One bidder stood to see him. Another checked Benedict's table number as though the chairman's identity might change on a second look. Even Lenora turned away from me. The blade stopped above Eamon's neck. Eamon's good eye shifted toward Benedict. The chairman and the debt were unknown to him. He recognized a stranger choosing danger for him. The auction crowd saw the same thing and began whispering that Benedict had challenged Lenora deliberately. One raised paddle had saved a life and started a rumor across the ship. Benedict's hand trembled. The paddle stayed raised. Lenora stared at the chairman. "You're buying him?" Benedict kept his voice steady. "Cash! Immediate transfer!" The auction host looked to Lenora for permission. The guests looked to see whether her own rules mattered when she disliked the winner. She lowered the blade. The sale was recorded. Eamon survived the count. The host struck the gavel. A screen behind the stage displayed Benedict's buyer number and the $20 million price. Several guests began recording the challenge. The applause had barely started when Lenora's companion turned from Benedict to me. The bid had saved Eamon and marked everyone at our table. I leaned toward Benedict. "He's the man I came for." "I assumed," Benedict replied. "You just made yourself a suspect," I warned. Benedict lowered the paddle. "You saved me when I had nothing. Let me be expensive once." The man had waited 48 years to repay a coin. Eamon's shoulders dropped for one breath. Lenora's companion looked from Benedict to me and did not look away. The bid had moved Eamon off the blade and placed suspicion on all of us. Eamon was transferred to Benedict's private medical suite under armed guard. Lenora smiled during the handoff and watched everyone who followed the chair. Inside the suite, I checked his breathing while Benedict locked the outer door. "I have a way off the ship. I need the brothers." Big Kells and Little Kells entered in service uniforms, pushing a cleaning cart. A dirty deck map lay beneath the towels. A stolen access band rested on top. I placed an A-rank mission card beside them. "Special assignment." Both brothers straightened. Big Kells looked at the card. "We're being promoted?" "For the next hour." Little Kells nodded solemnly. "Temporary greatness." I gave Big Kells the medical cart and Little Kells the lower launch controls. The map showed the service elevator between us. Big Kells saluted with a folded towel. Little Kells stole the better towel and saluted higher. They left to open the route. Eamon opened his good eye. "Elder brother," he whispered. I gripped his hand. "Years earlier, inside Providence House, we had promised to build a school for children like us." I told Eamon the school would provide every book. He argued that he would buy his own because accepting free things made him feel pitied. Harbor Light's shelves carried both kinds. Now the man who built them lay beneath the ship's medical light, and the people who hurt him owned every exit. "I should have stayed," I told him. Eamon tightened his fingers once. "Then the children would have seen this." I had no joke for that. My operator Beatrix pushed a stolen auction off his feed into my earpiece. Across the ship, Lenora slammed the auction blade through a table. "Kill Benedict Carrington," Lenora ordered. "Kill Eamon too." Her companion warned that murdering the chairman would create political fallout. Lenora looked toward the medical deck. "Then let the fallout burn!" A room service cart reached Benedict's suite several minutes later. The guards outside checked the covered plates and allowed it through. I opened the door. 3 disguised killers reached beneath the tablecloth. The first hid a pistol under the soup cover. The second had a wire in the napkin. The third kept one hand on the cart handle so the hallway guards would see a normal delivery until the door closed. Their setup was competent. Their mistake was serving a man who had spent 50 years killing with tableware. They never cleared their weapons. I drove the cart into the first man and struck the second with a porcelain lid. The third man's tie pulled him beneath the serving shelf. Benedict heard 3 impacts from the bedroom. I returned carrying only a teapot. "Where's the steak?" Benedict asked. "Cold." He looked at the unconscious room service team outside. "And the staff?" "Worse." I poured 1 cup of tea and placed it beside him. "I'll be back before that cools." Benedict looked toward Eamon, then at the door. "How many?" "More than 20. I stepped into the service hallway. Armed henchmen filled both ends. Rifles rose. Blades came free. The lead man looked at my empty hands and smiled. The service doors locked behind me. 10 men held the left corridor. More crowded the right around the stairwell. The lead man announced that Lenora wanted Benedict alive long enough to watch Eamon die. 2 men carried shields taken from ship security. 3 held short blades for the narrow hall. The rest kept rifles behind them, ready to fire through their own front line if I broke the formation. Lenora had packed the corridor to remove distance, cover, and retreat. She had also packed 20 targets close enough for 2 small objects to matter. That insult gave the ambush a personal shape. It also told me the brothers' escape route remained undiscovered. Lenora still believed every target sat inside the suite. Behind the closed door, Benedict's tea began cooling. In front of me, more than 20 men expected a bodyguard with no weapon. I reached to the room service shelf and picked up 2 glass salt shakers. The smile stayed for another second. "First-class assassins can turn anything into a weapon," I told them. Then I rolled both shakers across my knuckles. "Let me show you how terrifying ordinary things can be."